everyone, and welcome to day 4 of our budget hearings for the Town of Fairfield joint discussion, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance for the 2015 fiscal year budget. Would everyone please rise? And since he decided to come back for one last go-around on this, I'm going to ask our retired building department official, Jim Gillerin, to lead us. Come on up, Jim. To lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Where would you like me?
Right there is
Right
fine.
there is fine. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. And Jim, thank you for coming, and congratulations on your retirement, and best of luck to you as we move forward. And thank you for all your hard work on the behalf of the people of Fairfield. You will be missed, as evidenced by you being here tonight.
You mean someday as opposed to already?
So, well, I said to Jim jokingly before the meeting, it's nice of him to show up, given that in a few months we're going to blame him if this budget is messed up anyway, so. All right, so tonight we have Public Works on the agenda. We have the Building Department, Solid Waste and Recycling, Public Works Administration, Public Works Operations, Engineering, Street Lighting, and WPCA. So we will start with the Building Department. I would also like to welcome and congratulate Mr. Tom Connolly. He's the new head of the Building Department. He's an old friend. Known him, this board has known him for quite some time. Welcome, congratulations, and best of luck.
Thank you very much.
So let's go right ahead and go to the revenue line items associated with the department. Mr. Mayor or Mrs. Gardner, can you help us out? In
Page 48.
page 48.
Can I take a moment to thank everyone? I just want to, for the opportunity. It's my first time out, so I just want to thank everybody, kind of soften you up a little bit. Butter you up, soften you up. I would also like to thank, if I may, Bob Mayer and his entire staff has made my transitioning an absolute walk in the park. To be honest, Linda and everybody on that staff has been just wonderful. They've gotten to see me 4 and 5 times a day, so it's really been a great experience, and I had to thank them. They're the best. So.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. All right, so let's go right ahead, and Building Department revenues we'll start with for the year, and I'll turn it directly over to you. Go right ahead.
As you all know, that it's very difficult to project any of these revenues. We tried to make some calls and see what new projects are coming up, and the date line is really tough to figure out. So what we did here was we took a 3-year average on past revenues. We kind of gave that as our baseline. That was really the best thing we could do here to figure things for the future. There are some large projects on the horizon, but I do not have dates on them yet. When they will start. The Sacred Heart and Fairfield U have come to us with projects, but no dates. So.
What projects have they come to you with, just so that we're aware?
We have a dormitory coming up at Sacred Heart. We have they're going to move their television studio. That's on the books now. I don't know when they're going to be ready to pay for it. They also a dorm, and they have a parking garage also. Fairfield U came in. They have some other larger projects on the horizon. They may be starting them now. They may be starting them on July 1. So it's really hard to project how much is going to be there, and when their money is going to be on the table.
Are there any other large developments that you know of that are coming sooner rather than-
Garlic and Herb was supposed to show up. Again, I know that they signed contracts to purchase the property, to make the demolition. They have not put papers for the demolition yet, so it's hard to put a date on it. We were sort of hoping this year, but possibly not. I don't know where they are in land use, zoning, conservation. We're expecting a little bit more money with the new FEMA regulations. There's more FEMA money, so we expect another 20, 30, maybe 40 lifts going on in the beach area. So, and as you know, we're still cleaning up from that Sandy project, so. But I think most of the money has been spent already on permits at that level. When the new FEMA money comes in, there'll be applications. Again, very difficult when that money will be on the table, so.
Thank you. Open it up to board members for questions. Mr. Walsh?
Tom, the budget's going down for revenue by 6% total for all building permits. Is a lot of that because some of the Storm Sandy work has been done, because you guys were being inundated with all those applications for all the work that needed to be done down in the beach area?
Yeah, there's no question that that was a big boost to the economy, that we just got hit with so much work at that point, and I can't even imagine how many houses went down. I don't have a full list of it, but a tremendous amount of money. And we had a big boost from the Sacred Heart project. That was a big $40 million project that came in for last year, so.
And that's pretty much coming to at least the permit money?
There's no more permit money at that
Yeah.
level. Again, the FEMA money may come in, we may see some of it now, it's going to trickle in. I'm not sure how much, so,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Any other questions? We'll go to Mr. Brockfeld.
Tom, welcome, and good luck
Thank
to
you,
you, by the
thank
way. The only thing that leaps out at me is, Jerry, this thing is awfully loud, is penalties. They averaged $36,000 a year for the prior 3 years, and now they've gone down to give or take zero. Just
Sure.
curious. what
Well,
was the-
penalties,
yeah.
just a moment, penalties were really the blight penalties. We're not really about penalizing building permits. So that was the blight money that came in. It was a one-shot deal. We're looking at what we're trying to do is reassess all the blight, get it all new on the table. And most of the calls we made, people are now willing to settle up, get it done, get it off the table. So we kind of took a new approach and said, you know, everybody's off the table, now everybody's on the table, let's start new. But that was a big, and I believe it was the I. Brown property that paid that one-shot fee.
Okay.
So, again, it's something that is we don't have those big blight problems right now.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's working to some, it has a great effect.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, please.
I'm actually happy that we're not showing, what are you showing, $1,000? Because, I know the RTM's working on potentially changing that blight ordinance so that the money might go into some type of revolving fund, which is what I really think should happen. Because speaking in the past with Jim Gillerin and Tom recently, a lot of the blight situations in town could be solved if they had money in an account where they could help an elderly person take care of some problems with their property. And I fully, I was there when that ordinance was written on the RTM, and I know that Peter Ambrose is working on it, the RTM level now, but I think it'd be great if those fees, up to a certain level, went into an account that, either Tom's department is the head blight officer, or the condemnation board had funds available so that when an emergency pops up, there's blight, that it can just be used for that purpose. I just don't think the town should be trying to count on blight revenue in the budget. That's just my own point of view, but, hopefully the RTM will be coming back and changing that ordinance.
I agree, Jim, and it would be nice to have some type of a small fund. We just had an issue on Crane Street where we had an emergency. It had to be, building had to be boarded up so it wouldn't, become a public nuisance or blighted, whatever. It was the fire there. So as an emergency fund, I don't really have funds for that, so it would be nice to have something. So thank you for mentioning that.
Before I go on, I have to say that I completely agree with those sentiments and think that it should be segregated and used in that way. And as Mr. Walsh said, although this board wasn't involved, I believe I remember reading that that was the original intent when it was done by the RTM, and I would support that as well. Other questions, comments on revenue? Yes, we'll go to Mr. Tetro, and then we'll go to Ms.
Yeah, just to add on to that, that's, that type of amendment has been kind of kicking around in the RTM for a couple of years now.
Yep.
So that you're both, I both agree with what your sentiments are, and I think the RTM agrees. I think it's just getting action done on that.
Yeah.
The challenge is to write that in such a way that it doesn't turn the town into a landscaping company.
Yep.
But to, as Mr. Walsh said, certainly if there is need, the big bulk of the blight fees, if you look over time, shouldn't come from residential property. They really, if there's a blighted property, it really should come on the commercial side where there, and that's what you saw with I. Brown Brothers. We have definitely gotten the word out with Mr. Gilleran's help over the past 2 years that from the commercial standpoint, certainly, if you're going to leave a blighted property and we get to the point that we fine you, and the goal is not to collect fines. This is not as, again, I'll concur, it's not a revenue source. This is something of the last resort to encourage folks to do it. But if we get to the point that we're fining you, you're going to pay the fine. There is no negotiation after that point. And that's why you saw the money come through on the Brown Brothers. Again, we don't have, just to be clear, we literally can't collect on that till the property's sold. We have no way of forcing the payment. So that the challenge of that, and I hope the blight ordinance will also consider looking at some different fine levels based on the seriousness of the magnitude of it and the situation. Right now, it's one size fits all, and that makes it add up very quickly on the residential side, and perhaps not quickly enough on the commercial side to address the issues. So that'll be an ongoing topic of discussion this term with the RTM.
Thank you, Mr. Tetra. Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello, Mr. Conley. So back to the FEMA and the funds coming in for next year. I just want to clarify and kind of provide a different context. When the initial work was being done, there were a number of folks in the beach area who had asked about having fees waived, and we had some conversation about that, and I remember some conversation at some of the forums with respect to the fact that the amount of work that was being done by the building department and the number of inspections had increased tremendously, thus the fee support. So when we talk, you were talking earlier about kind of the economic influx of funds for that extra FEMA work. I just wanted to point out and ask you to kind of talk about the workload level that goes along with those permits that come in. Just so that this isn't just about the town looking at revenue, it's about addressing the real needs there and doing the work properly and in the way it needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you very much, because a lot of people don't realize just how much work is involved in these projects. When you lift a house, you have to have engineering, you have to have a tremendous amount of code review. And again, something to that, we've just undergone a brand-new code change as of February 28th, and it put a tremendous impact on the building departments throughout the state. The amount of new inspections that we are required to do has probably gone up 10–15%, as well as the amount of possibly every single code review done has to be done. We could have done some before in 20 minutes. Now they're an hour and 15, 20 minutes apiece. So simply because of the new regulations the state's put on us. So a tremendous amount of impact to us. I'm hoping everybody understands that there's going to be a lot of people that have to hold back. We cannot give permits like we did before. Tremendous amount of code review and more inspections, from raising gas lines, sewer lines, electric lines. That's all on the building department. It's a tremendous impact to us. We have a fabulous staff of people, very dedicated people. I have to comment on that. Wonderful people. Our secretary does a tremendous job keeping it all together for us. So I really want to thank everybody in my department for going way and above. These people stay late, they work through their lunch hours, and we get the job done for this town. It's a tremendous department, so I really have to thank all of them for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Any other questions on revenue for this department? Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in regards to the changes, have there been any increases in fees, and is there consideration of doing that? I mean, just to kind of compensate for that much
No,
Sounds like a lot of extra
I've
work.
called around the state from West Hartford to Westport to Wilton. We have meetings with these other departments, and we're really pretty much where everybody else is. I guess you could raise the fees, but we're really level with everyone else right now. Some are higher by a little bit, certain areas, first $1,000 of commitment to the fees, or it's pretty much the same throughout, though.
So you're keeping them level, and it's just, may
And
take a little bit longer to
That's
get
just
through.
by happenstance, but I know in the past, Jim had made calls to other towns, and we try to keep it on keel with everybody else, so.
Yeah, no, I'm sure everyone appreciates that.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be fair to well, again, that would not be my decision, but to inflict more fees on something like that right now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you. Actually, it follows up on Mr. Becker's, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I had a couple of vendors, a couple of shops who had damage in Westport at one point, and they moved their operations to Fairfield, right? Their leases were up, they moved to Fairfield.
Thank them for us.
Well,
Our
it was
tax
interesting.
revenue.
Yeah, but both of the two people that I know of came up to me at one point and said, "Do you guys realize how much more expensive you are than Westport when it comes to certain fees?" And I didn't have a response to that, and I don't remember the details. This was quite some months ago. One of them, I think, was signage. Would that be through you guys?
We take a signage fee, yeah, but also the zoning department takes a fee for it, and we take a fee as well. So I'm not sure how much they pay in zoning.
Yeah, it might be something that we look into, because as to where we stand up when our commercial tenants move into town and what their fees are versus, what they might have in Westport. I'm not implying that
Sure.
you guys don't, but, Mr. Becker, thank you, because your comments reminded me of these people that did mention it to me. So it'd be interesting to see, because it happened back to back. It happened, one weekend after another that somebody mentioned it to me, so.
Well, I would say that if you looked at the revenue that we take, $4,100, $3,500, depending on the year, it's not a lot of money, and we do a lot of signs, so, not that ours
Yeah.
isn't out of scale with others, we can check on it, but it's certainly not up there in the ranks of some of the other types of permits, so.
All right, and signage was just the one I remembered.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I'll call Westport and get back with you if you like.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Conley. All right, any other questions on revenue? Seeing none, we'll go to the departmental expense budget, 50/50, which, 249, thank you. Any questions on this budget? It's going up 3.6%. So let's talk about a global question before I turn it over. What's going on, a 3% increase in salaries in this, or in payroll? Is this all just a one-year increment, or is there more going on here? Hello?
My end?
No, I'm going to ask you guys. I'm asking the finance department.
Yeah, and again, just to remind everybody, it's finance that does all the payroll lines,
Right.
payroll-related. It's not the department head. So those questions will really go to Ms. Gardner.
I'm going to refer you to page 251, which is the personnel, sorry. I refer you to page 251, which is the personnel summary,
Yep.
and you'll see the salaries that are contained within the 14 budget, and there's a little parens that indicates the year. And you'll see how that compares to how we're budgeting in the 15. So you will see that there is one PETA position that had a 3-year increase from 10 to 13.
And all the rest are only one-year increases?
Actually, there's no increases other than a step increase if there is one. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's one step increase, there's step increases. There's no contractual increases on those other positions. What we did this year is we're indicating which salaries were reflected in the 14 final budget versus which salaries we're projecting in the 15 budget based on the most current information of the most current contract settlements.
I don't understand. What am I missing?
Chair. The little number in paren indicates the last year of the union contract. So if you look at these, they're all 13 with the exception of the PETA person. So the change in the PETA person from 106 to 110, that $4,000 is probably primarily the result of the contract change, since the contract from the 14 budget was based upon the wage scales in the union contract through June 30 of 2010. The wages in the 15 budget are based upon the union contract June 30, 2013. So that leaves another $10,000, $9,000 difference, and the only explanation for that difference would be longevity increases of the various employees.
I only see a, okay, so, except take that one out, right? That's like a $4,000 difference.
That's what I
Right.
say. The rest is 10,000. The difference is 10,000.
Well, it's 491.
It's in the building inspector line.
Yeah, no, I know. And the building inspector line has gone, or rather, the assistant building official line has gone down.
Yeah.
Right? So that means that the increase is, again, back up to 14K. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why is it a 3% increase for the department? Is that a contractual 3% year over year? I mean, if you strip out the anomalies, you got one going one way, one going the other way. They virtually wipe themselves out, and you still get a 3% increase.
Yeah, the bulk of that, the entire increase is 15 grand. 12 grand of that is due to the increase in the 3 building inspectors.
Right. And what I'm asking is that a one-year increase?
I believe that has to do with the longevity, but I'm going to let Ms. Gardner confirm that.
And what does that mean in terms of, in other words, what I'm trying to get to is, what's the contractual salary increase that's called for in their contract versus what is their longevity?
Yeah, in the building inspector, there was a new hire. That
higher
was hired at a salary that was greater than that budgeted in the 14 budget.
So we hired at a higher rate than we lost the last person at?
Yes.
Well, not that we lost.
Well, there's more than, well, I can't say that positively. I can say, I can only tell you that we hired someone at a higher rate than what was budgeted in the 14 budget.
It would seem to make sense to go back and get the actual facts on that so we can clearly answer the question.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just telling you that's what happened. I don't know, that is fact. What I said was fact. We hired a person at a $14,000 higher than was in the budget.
$14,000 higher than what was in the budget?
There's 3 of them.
No, I don't know if the person was.
No, I know,
was
but
it
that's
for
a
the full year?
significant,
It's 6.1%.
right, higher.
No, well,
I'm assuming they hired at the best price they could get. Mr. Gillern might have an answer to the question.
Everyone that was replaced at a lower rate.
Who's on first?
I don't know who was hired at a higher rate. When we hired, the last person we hired when I was there was Mike, and he may have gotten a step increase after he had passed the state test. But other than that, anyone else that was hired, even the assistant building official that we didn't have for over a year.
Yeah, I think you hired at a higher step level.
$14,000, that's like 3 steps.
That's exactly it.
Well, that's almost 20% higher.
That's exactly what they hired.
Actually, the only person that we hired when I was still there was just the one inspector, and he wasn't hired at $14,000 more. Hired at less. And we were still missing the assistant building official. Well, actually, Tom took over George's spot.
Yep.
George left, and that was 2 years ago.
Can we?
Again, let's get
Yeah, I
the
mean, this is
specifics
easy to
on that
document.
so we
Mr. Chair.
can,
Yes.
This is very easy to document. I mean, basically,
I know.
there's one piece of information we don't know, and that is what was the basis of the number that's in the 14 budget. It might have been anticipated at some point that the person would be hired at less because it'd be a new person, et cetera, et cetera.
Can-
I can only tell you what the difference is, but we can
Yeah.
document this very easily.
yeah, let's get that back so the board can review that, so both boards can review that, so we know exactly what happened, then we can review the situation.
Mr. DeWitt, you had a comment?
Just that last year's budget book, 13 to 14, all the numbers went down or stayed even, which is, your recollection is correct. Assistant building official went down, building inspector went down, building official stayed constant, building B bill. So, except for the secretary B, which we all knew what was going on there, right? That was so they all went down in 14, now they're all coming back up. They're pretty close to 13 numbers.
I didn't think they had a contract.
I don't think they do, right? Does Thea
All right, let's get an answer on it. We can sit here and speculate all night. What I want to know is that 3%, what I'm trying to get to, is that 3% increase a run rate, or is it an anomaly? Is it a trend? What's going on there? So if we can get back to that, thank you, Mr. Gillerin, thank you, everybody else. Let's get the facts on that. I'll turn it over to everybody else. Mr. Stone?
On the last line, 58,300, on the year 13, there was for liability claims and damage, there was 72,000, and then there's nothing for that. What, I don't remember that.
Those were the Storm Sandy demolitions that we had problems with 4 of the homes, so that we had, we had a demo contractor remove them because they were a problem for the town, and we do have liens. I checked today with the town attorney confirmed, as well as Betsy Brown's office, that we have liened all 4 of those properties. So essentially, we'll be getting that money back when they sell or when they liquidate the property. So I did look into that today. It was kind of glaring to me as well, so.
Other questions? Mr. Walsh?
Yes. Line 53,200, fees and professional services. And I guess this question is directed to the first selectman, because you raised their budget request from 7,000 to 12,000. So you added 5,000. And what was the reason why you added $5,000 onto that line?
I'm going to go back, we did that in discussion, Tom. Can you
Yeah, that
fill us
was,
in?
mainly that was our IT transfer, where they've transferred the IT, the Mitchell Humphreys. Apparently, they want all of the IT transfers where they're specific to a department to be transferred into that department. So, as I recollect, that was the IT change, or a reflection of that. You should see a reduction in IT for that amount.
You'll see as we go through other departments, there are certain cases where the software is focused entirely on that department, that we're moving the cost to that department. If it's something that's shared among a number of departments, we're still keeping that within IT.
All right, so we're going to see a couple other occasions, times where you actually added to your budget because it was done after they prepared their budget, and you'd tell them that,
When we
department by department?
We go through,
Okay.
we look at that, and in conjunction with Ms. Gardner, we kind of make that change the easiest way possible. Sometimes that can be included in the original budget. Other times, it's something that's, we might have followed up on, and the determination was made to include that here, so it came in after the fact.
Okay.
But you will see, I won't say a lot of cases like this, but there will be a few cases like this as we go through the department budgets.
Ms. Walsh, all set?
That's it.
Ms. McCarthy V.
Thank you. You talked about the increase in the need for code review and kind of the greater level, and I'm not sure if that requires a greater level of technical expertise and if other training has been required for you? If so, how are you absorbing that within the budget?
We're actually absorbing it into our day-to-day lives at the building department. We're trying to simply take it in and to be honest with you, we're going to run some seminars with some of the contractors to try to educate contractors. So it's not entirely on us to take a plan, review it without the comments that are needed to progress. So in April, we'll be hosting a small seminar, a couple hours for contractors that want to get there, and here's what we need on your plans before we take them, before we can actually process them. So we're kind of being a little proactive with this. I know the code's already in effect, but we've contacted 5 or 10 of the local contractors. We're going to open it up to anybody, come on in, and hopefully that will resolve 50% of our problems. We're going to have problems with homeowners that take permits, and they're allowed to, but the way the code is formatted today, they're going to have difficulty doing that. So we're trying to resolve it in just day-to-day life, you know, getting it in our heads, because it's a new code, a tremendous amount of new code for us, and then presenting it to the contractors, the ones that'll be there, architects, contractors, design professionals. So we're hoping that gets the message out, and we won't have to do the tremendous review. It'll already be on print for us. So we're trying to be proactive with it.
So it's essentially you all are doing the on-the-job learning, and you're confident that that's working, and you're also partnering with your contractors as well.
We are required to do many hours of continuing education, and I've personally taken 3 or 4 of these courses in this particular field of residential problems. So everybody in my office, I do have 2 new people, by the way. They're going to be trained. We're going to try to do it over the span of a year or so. It's a big learning curve for everybody, but we do train, and we are getting it.
And the budget that you have is sufficient for that?
I hope so, yes. I hope so.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. You intrigued me with this IT thing. So is the IT software, is this software that you've requested as a department head?
We're using the software right now for our permitting. It handles every single permit we have on current permits. We have some old software that we're trying to possibly integrate in as well. We're having some dirty permits, as they say, and I don't know what that means. I don't even want to speculate, but dirty permits cannot be integrated into this, so some of that might accommodate some of that integration of an old system into what we have as an existing system. So that I need to, once I'm done with these hearings, I'm going to progress with that from Mitchell Humphrey and see what we can do to get these all integrated. But it's probably maintenance fees and things like that, changes.
Yeah, that's where I was going. So the 12,000 isn't necessarily, you went out and bought $10,000 worth of software and 2,000. You might have bought 5,000, then there's maintenance. Now, the
There's a
IT
maintenance
department
charge
is
to
still integrated into this, right? I'm assuming the IT department hasn't walked away from helping to maintain your software.
No, our IT department's very helpful with that, but this is separate. This is, I would say, I'm not sure if hosted, but it's outside the IT department. It's actually Mitchell Humphreys, so we
Mitchell
pay
Humphrey,
them.
I don't know who Mitchell,
Just a
outside
name brand
contracting?
of name brand of a particular type of software.
Okay.
So
we're most likely going to see this number, or a number like this every year?
I would say
that
so,
you're,
yes.
That you're
Yes,
moving forward?
and this may go up as well if we have to, as I say, integrate our old system. Right now, we function on 2 systems, and it is a bit difficult to navigate an old system and the new system. It'd be wonderful to have an integration. Again, with the old system being dirty, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To follow up on that, before you go further, to follow up on that one item, for any instances where we took software, Finance Department, any instances where we took software out of the IT budget and transferred it to the department, can you please provide us with a complete schedule of here's all the software items and the amounts and what they were? and these were transferred to this schedule, so that we don't have to have the conversation each time each department comes up.
Excellent idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gillerin, did you have something you wanted to add?
The Mitchell Humphrey, we pay a service charge to them every year, between $3,600 and $4,000 a year.
Thank you.
For maintenance on the software.
On this specific software, which is used by the building department.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for adding that request. I think it'll be very helpful. There's only, I believe, 2 other lines that are just kind of larger numbers. They're not big numbers, but they're big percentages.
Sure.
And it's just the seasonal payroll going up 20, and then I believe it's the clothing and dry goods. If you could just give a brief summary, just, why the percentages are just so high on those.
Sure. Seasonal payroll is what we had paid our code reviewer to do. The gentleman has retired. We've sought we've tried to get information on how much other people are charging, and the gentleman was a little older and retired and willing to do it for less money than I can actually get people to come in for. So the town was fortunate to have him at that rate, and all the information I get, I don't think I can get anybody at that rate. So we kind of put a little bit out there and said, we would love to have somebody at that old rate, but I don't think I can hire anybody.
Understandable.
So it's a bit difficult at that lower rate, so
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
bump in that.
And then just the other one, you just had clothing and dry goods. Is that a contractual item now? Or?
A lot of it is contractual. Most of it stemmed from the fact that we have hired 2 new inspectors. We have a plumbing inspector and an electrical inspector. I need to outfit them with some safety gear, some work boots. We have OSHA regulations that have also changed, and we need to be more in step with OSHA. I need to get these people trained in OSHA. We have a pending litigation because of some OSHA issues, not with us, but a job. And as you see on Pequot, we had another OSHA problem. A gentleman fell. My people are out underneath this type of situation every single day, and they're subject to tremendous amount of safety hazards. They need training, they need clothing, they need safety apparel. I'm very concerned with what I see out there. These fast-track jobs, some of them are very hazardous. So this is a reflection of 2 new people plus some new safety requirements.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
They need to look good, too.
They gotta look good. It's tough to look like you and I do all day long, Jim.
Thank God. Any other questions, comments? This is quickly deteriorating. Mr. Mayor, you have a question?
But one, because this issue may come up further in another time. One thing Linda just reminded me about, whenever we budget a vacancy, a known vacancy position, we budget at step 1.
Okay.
And the person who was hired came in at a step 3 in the specific line item we're talking about.
Okay. Great. We look forward to the full
Yeah, there'll be,
response, but thank you.
but this will
Yeah.
come up anytime there's
Repeatedly.
anytime, because you don't always, that's been policy throughout the years. HR brings in for the vacancy, new hire as a step 1, but it doesn't always come in at a step 1.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this budget? Mr. Connolly, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck to you once again.
Thank you. Appreciate
All
it.
right, Mr. Gillerin, thank you and welcome. You're always welcome. Let's go to solid waste and recycling. Page 54 is the revenue with this department.
If I could make a request that we address the engineering budget first, that will, Bill Hurley has the smallest item. He's here tonight, and that'll get him on his merry way quicker if that's acceptable to the board.
We can do that, so we can let him go. Yeah. Let's go to page 254 then, and 255. Welcome, Mr. Hurley. Please step us through the Any major variances within your budget, please? I guess I'm going to go right to the same question I had before. What's going on with payroll in this department?
I can assist if you guys can.
Okay. If you look at page 255,
We are.
okay, you're going to see that there are 3 individuals in the PETA union whose last contracted salary reflected in the 14 budget was 10. The contract settled. It caught them up to 13. The difference between the 14 budget and the 15 budget is 3 years' worth of settlement for those 3 individuals.
Okay.
The combined settlement amount would be 6.5% over that 3-year period. So for those 3 salaries, they're up 6.5%. Average that with the other salaries who have, for the most part, not changed unless there was a longevity step increase earned.
Right, so it's...
You see an average of 3.7.
Said another way, and maybe what we need to do is, before these meetings, maybe if you guys could go through the budgets that we're going to go through that night, and just call stuff like this out, because if you look at it, essentially, the salary increase over the year is about $20,000, of which 18 of that relates to those
Yes.
those positions. So you're talking 2,000. So really, there's 2 variances there. There's the 6.7 and then closer to 1 or less than 1%, right, is really.
Right.
So if we could just, I mean, I like the fact that you put the contract year in here.
Exactly, and that's so...
Calling it out would be
Calls
great.
attention, and I can tell you what each contract year is equivalent to in a percentage increase. We've prepared that for you
Yeah.
as well.
It would be good if we, for next year, on the personnel summary pages, if we could actually put the percentage differential, would help. Much like we do up on the budget. Any other questions on the payroll?
Yeah, one.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Walsh on that one, and do you guys have them on payroll? Okay, and you have it on payroll, Mary? Okay.
In regards to the instrument operator slash drafter, is that a new person in the job? That's why they're coming in at like a lower step? Is that because their salary seems to go down? We're
I think
15?
it's the insurance.
No, that's correct.
What?
Yeah.
We had a new person,
Yes, you hired a new person.
so their salary went down like
Yes.
that's happened in other departments. Great, okay, thank you.
Go to Mrs. Leclerc.
Well, Jim just asked half my question, but then there's another one that went up almost like the same amount.
Longevity step. If you're talking about a Thea person, it was...
Drafter, I guess.
Okay. We'll go to Mr. DeWitt.
Yeah, just a generic question. So if it says, if it's 13 to 13, the numbers should be the same unless there's a step increase.
Correct.
So if we see any increase, if it's lower, you hired a new guy to lower step. If it's higher, it's a step increase.
Yes.
But the generic number, 13 to 13, should not change because none of the, because
Right.
the contract's not settled.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Other questions? Quick, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. So you've got 2 software items under the capital. So those wouldn't be, so if we go back to building, it's really, it's under fees and professional services there because it's more of a maintenance fee, but the acquisition of the software, we would put under capital?
Yes, these are specialized engineering. We would be the only department to use that software. And they're capital purchases.
Okay, and I do see in the fees a little bit of an increase. Is that now like an ongoing cost for those, or is that just something else then?
The fees and professional services are when we do concrete cylinder tests, the state used to pay for the 7-day and the 28-day test. Now the state will not pay for the 7-day test. So that $100 is the reason
Gotcha.
why.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
Any other questions, comments on this budget? Mr. DeWitt?
But it'll get easier. The software's capital, I get it. But is that, because I looked in the IT department, and there's a minus, a big minus for software transferring to departments. Would that $1,000 for architectural software and $1,000 for stormwater management, would that have been an IT purchase prior to this year, or is this one, would this have been a capital request?
No, these are, as I said, engineering specific. We know more about the software in this case than the IT department would be, so.
So you buy it, you guys load it, IT doesn't do anything?
That would be, I mean, they might help us load it, but, they're really engineering-specific
Yeah.
software.
If I can interject here, the fact that the purchase or the costs are reflected here is basically set up to show the total cost of our engineering department. Right? If they need to, it doesn't, where the costs were, doesn't change the support mechanism from IT. The cost could have been in IT last year and could have been paying for an outside company to do the support. The cost could be in here because it reflects what the department costs, and there still could be support from IT to help with that.
Right.
So it's not...
I think this is great. It's nice to look at a budget and see $12,000 in building and $2,000 in engineering for IT support or software, new software. I totally get it. I'm just looking at the IT budget that's up a substantial amount with a small minus number, and I'm curious that tracks back.
Well, that's why
and-
I asked for the schedule.
Right.
Yeah.
So once we get that, we should be able to tie that right back.
Right.
Well, and I think there are some changes in the IT budget, so you're going to have to, it's,
Yep.
to
Yep.
Mr. Flynn's point, it's pluses and minusing on that. So you'll have that sheet in your hand so you can review the IT budget adequately.
Yep, got it.
Mr. Becker?
Just on, so, and kind of getting to where I was going with this being the capital versus fees, when you give us that, it'll have, if it was capital and what came out, if it was fees, anything that came out, even if it was in different line items, you'll kind of give us that whole picture for the IT department as
I'm going to
best you
say
can?
yes and no to that. For the most part, I'm going to agree with that. I just want to be clear. If it's a new purchase for software, it wouldn't have come out of IT. It occurred for the first time in this budget, so that's why it's under capital. If it's a maintenance fee, then you're absolutely correct. It would have come out of IT and over here.
Okay. I do agree with what you're trying to do. It does make a lot more sense, so, thank you.
Any other questions?
That was a schedule that we were planning on submitting during the IT portion, but having it in front of you during this portion, when it comes up, is a good idea as well.
Good, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Earl.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Page 54, we will start again. Revenue. Hello there. Good to see you.
Same here, thank you.
All right. Waste and recycling revenue.
I'll have a page.
I will turn it over to you gentlemen to walk us through the methodology for the revenue calculation.
Page you want?
Page 54, under solid waste and recycling. You are welcome.
Yes, I have a increase in revenue this year based on increased tonnage.
So this is
And
not
user
a rate
fee.
increase, it is strictly a volume increase?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the tonnage increase based on? What's the estimate based on?
36,000 tons. It's 1,000 tons more this year
Based on,
on tonnage coming in now.
no, why do we think it's going up? I'm sorry.
Based on the current tonnage that we're receiving increases compared to last year.
So you're trending
and
higher?
Trending higher, correct.
And you're just lengthening that trend? You're
Correct.
assuming that trend's going to be for a full year next
Yes.
year? Okay. Questions? Mr. Walsh?
The recyclables rebate seems to be going down by 50%. What was the reason? Is there some program or
Yes.
changing that whole thing?
We contracted with a hauler to take our recyclables to a facility, and unfortunately, they lost the facility, so we lost 50% of our revenue. However, we saved $140,000 in expenses by not going to another facility. So we saved $140,000 in the expenses.
We like that.
What does that mean, they lost the facility?
They were going to contract at they were going to have a facility in Stratford, and they lost their contract. And we had to go to a different facility in Stratford that eventually trucked their materials, our materials, up to Shelton. The distance was double the distance, and we couldn't have our haulers from Fairfield truck your recyclables up to Shelton and double their cost.
So what are we doing with them now?
We're taking the recyclables, our haulers that are taking the recyclables from the residents are taking the recyclables to Stratford, to All American Waste, and they are shipping it up to Shelton, where we are splitting the revenue. But we did save $140,000 on the expense side, taking it there.
Thank you. Other questions on these items? Mr. DeWitt?
Wasn't it also this year we imposed a new additional fee on the haulers for individual homes? There was a new fee, I thought.
There was a $550 per vehicle for the cars.
No, I'm talking about
The
private haulers that
private
come and
haulers?
pick up. There was I thought there was a new fee assessed
We
to
did
private haulers.
increase their fee.
Okay. So we increased the fee if you go to the landfill.
Correct.
And you increased the fee for the companies that
Residents.
would come to the individual homes, right?
Yes, and the residents that use our
That's-
transfer
And that's
station.
that's also buried in these numbers, I'm assuming, some
Correct.
increase, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, right now I have no increase for the homeowners or the haulers right now, and we are still going to show a profit, an increase, yeah, a revenue increase. And we will be getting a decrease in our expense also.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Mr. Walsh?
Just a minor question. The blue bin sales, are we just saying that we just really don't have that many sales? And why even put a number down there?
No, we do, but it's a revolving account.
Okay.
So we're just taking it out of the account that we have
Yep.
and just replenishing it. And I take some of the blue bins I have in my, one of my accounts, my special departmental supplies.
Yep.
I take those and purchase those out of that.
Okay.
For giving it to certain town departments and people who need them
Yeah. Okay.
within the municipality.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Mrs. McCarthy-Vehy?
Thank you, and thanks, Mr. Zimbruski, and Mr. Michelangelo for being here. So I guess, good news on the revenue side in terms of projecting for 1,000 more tons, but bad news in terms of bigger picture, at least in my perspective. I personally would love to see more on the recycling end and less on the tonnage. What are we doing to try and increase the recycling? And I know it will impact revenue, but from an environmental standpoint, how are we encouraging folks to recycle?
We encourage every day, and we've got a coordinator now that hopefully she can get out into the field and go to residents and businesses and push the cause. And we're trying to recycle everything we can. Anything that comes out new that we can recycle, for example, latex paint and oil-based paint, we will try to do that for the town to save us money.
Just as a follow-up, does the recycling coordinator also coordinate with our school communities in terms of recycling within the school buildings, or is it just with
She will
the
be.
town?
She will be doing that.
Okay, that's great, thank you. There's great potential there, and I know a lot of the schools do that already, but I think there's always room for improvement, so thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from board members on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to the departmental budget, which is on 269. My apologies, any questions or comments from the public? I did not ask that, and not questions so much as comments. Seeing none, we'll go to 269, solid waste and recycling, the expense side. And please walk us through this budget. It's a beautiful thing, down 2%.
Up in revenue, down in expense. I like this.
Can we put you in charge of the budget for the entire town, please?
Don't walk us in any different direction.
Yeah, for a price.
Probably offset the savings.
I'll give you a quarter of what you save. All right. Go ahead, take a look. What's going on here with the, with your budget?
Well, basically, the big picture here is the fees and professional services. We've not contracted with CRA next year, so we're automatically saving money right there. We're saving $100,000 there, but we're increasing our tonnage, so it's a trade-off, but we're getting more tonnage for less, and our numbers are down.
And what about in the payroll line? It's down. Is that,
We had a coordinator who was here 42 years. He retired, and we have a new coordinator that is at a lower level.
10 grand.
Next page, top line,
yep,
$10,000.
okay. And we do have an offset here with one of the settlements of the contract for one person on the PETA union. Any other questions on this budget? Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you. If you could remind us, what is the requirement in terms of tonnage with the contract? Is there, in the past, I remember we've had a
We had
minimum
a,
amount
we had a 42,000 ton minimum commitment, but that was waived. And right now, we've got 3 months left in our contract with CRA. We're done. So they will not enforce any minimum commitment. They've already,
And in the new contract, there's not a similar requirement?
I don't see one. We're still under negotiations right now, so I guess we really couldn't talk about what the
I think,
contracts.
Mike, it might help to explain that structurally, we're going with a group.
Yes, we're basically going with a group of municipalities like we did with the CRA, but now we're dealing direct with for example, if we get a contract with Wheelabrator, we're dealing directly with them. So we're cutting out the middleman, the CRA, and if we encourage other towns to join us, our tip fee should decrease based on the tonnage. The more tonnage you deliver as a group, the less tip fees you should pay.
That was an item that both the Board of Selectmen and the RTM gave authorization to us to enter negotiation at the end of January, so it's been productive as far as the tip fee, so hopefully we'll come to a favorable number on that.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll go to the public. Nothing? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a small one real quick. Let's take street lighting 4070, and we'll just do this.
Sorry, where?
4070, my apologies, it's page 220. Who's going to speak to this one?
Okay. Well, I'll
Thank
start.
you very much.
Okay. I'll have Ed Bowman come up and
Hey, Ed.
and speak about it since he does most of the work on this.
Thank you very much, sir.
420. 220, I'm sorry. 220.
Did I say 420?
I'm sorry.
No, 220. Go right ahead, thanks. This should be pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty standard from year to year. The only differences are basically the differences in the rates from UI or the power company that we're buying power from, and if the 5 or 6 new lights we may put in on an annual basis. So basically, Integris Energy is providing the power until December 31st at 6.3 cents a kilowatt hour, and UI is providing the balance of it at about 27 cents a kilowatt hour. And we don't project any changes in that. However, from January to June of 2015, we think the cost of electricity is going up here and across anywhere in the town for a number of reasons. Recently, the announcement of Yankee closing their power plant in upper New England has pushed the price of natural gas dramatically up, because that means all the electricity that's going to be made to replace that nuclear plant is going to come from natural gas plants. So supply and demand. And also the power, that means also the power, the gas lines coming from Pennsylvania and the other Mashala Share ones are not here yet. The existing gas lines are going to be full up. there'll be no room for it. Both those factors are producing much higher natural gas prices, which means much higher electric prices. The purchasing director and myself, meeting with our electric consultant, basically suggested that we'd be lucky to get a price at 8.8 cents a kilowatt hour in 2015 versus the 6 cents this year. Now, again, we're trying to do something different. It's not just streetlights, but as Mike is saying, we've put all these towns together to try and negotiate a power deal with Wheelwright, and that doesn't seem to be working. But now we have 10 towns who can put their power demands together and put out a bid for a contract for a much larger amount, and that should lower the prices a little bit. But, you know, that's for the electric budget, it also works here.
So it looks like in the write-up, it says a 4% increase. The rate is, distribution is paid to UI. It's a 4% increase. Is that at January 1st? So you're getting a 2% increase overall? I'm trying to put all the pieces
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
With what you're saying versus what's written here, I'm trying to... Can you briefly step us through that? How does that work?
That's how it works.
Well,
Not
no,
sure I know
I'm
what
trying
you
to
mean.
compare it year over year, and to be honest, what's not in the budget is, you have the breakout of what we're paying this year, or what we're paying next year, you have nothing compared to this year. So I'm trying to compare, you know,
Where is it? I don't see any breakout at all.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't see,
Okay, so
I
on
don't see
page,
the breakout for.
page 220, you have the breakout of what makes up the 653.
Yep.
I don't have the same breakout that what makes up the 640 from this past year. And I'm trying to follow what you were just saying compared to the write-up, and it's quite frankly confusing me.
Well, what it would be,
I don't know, is anybody else confused?
I see what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have one for, I wasn't asked to do one for this year, so I don't have that, but I can certainly do that.
If you want to just do that, if that's the easier way to
Sure.
do it, is just...
It's easier to see it on paper than just trying to explain it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looking for historical data? Like back?
just last year.
Oh.
I'm just,
In the last year's budget.
I think it's in a different format. At least I don't, it's just the write-up, it's not the
Yeah.
calculation.
No, that's right.
Right, so I'm looking at, if you look at the calculation of the 653, just that one box that has it, 117, 491, and 45 equals the 653, be interested to know what the 640 is this year, what that breakout of that is, and kind of put that together with your explanation about what's going on with the rates. You see what I'm saying?
Yep, that's what we did with the electric budget, just didn't do it here, right?
Exactly. I'm just trying to follow the math. I'm listening to what you're saying and trying to integrate it with this, and I could just be lost, so I'm not saying,
I hear you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Want to bring up this?
Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Bowman, the LED lights that are on Post
I
Road.
just want
Sure.
to, I know that was one of your favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
But we also have, there's a supplemental for the electric, there's also a supplemental for UI, for the streetlights, and it's going to, what I'm talking about is that increase in projected rates for the last half of the year are going to raise this amount by $22,400.
More than what you have
Yes,
here.
because when we budgeted this one, we were budgeted at 7.5%. These crises, as I outlined, really only became evident in the last 2 or 3 months, where we go to 8.8 cents rather than 7.5 cents.
Can you
So the
put-
increase will be higher.
Can you put a brief memo together and kind of step us through this? Here's what the assumptions are when we had the budget book.
Actually, I do have this, I just realized it. And so it'd be easy to get a copies for it, I do have it.
Okay.
I forgot I had it.
All right.
I did it as part of the whole electric bill, that's right.
Okay. So if you could just put a brief memo together and say, here's what was last year, here's what's in the budget book, this is what we assumed, this is additional information that's changed, so this is what the new number would be. if
Right,
think
I'll show you
it-
side by side like the electric
Perfect.
budget, yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes,
if you go to page 220,
I'm on page 220.
the comparative items in the box on the bottom,
Yep.
current estimate for the, I have no idea what InterGERS stands for, is
That's the name of the electric company.
is 128,250.
That's for this year,
That's the current estimate, yes, sir.
okay?
UI is 489, 457,
Well, let's see.
excuse me, 427, I apologize.
Whatever, we don't need the exact.
And the loan is 45. total of 662, something, something, something.
Which doesn't
And
equal the budget, but
The
that's...
the budget was
estimate.
640. So at this time, based upon current information, this is projected to be about $22,000 over budget.
And what you're saying is the 653 is low by 20, based on better available information since this was booked.
Correct.
Okay. I'd still like to see the memo, but thank you very much for digging that up. Thank you. Mr. Walsh, back to you.
The LED light program on Post Road, is that working as well as you thought it would?
Yes, it
Because
is.
I have to say that those lights look fantastic. I mean, and the one reason you know it is because no one from the public started saying that there was a major change. They look
Right, I don't even
exactly the
notice it.
same. No one's even noticed it, and you're saving a ton of electricity. So it's been working as well. There's no major maintenance issues or anything else like that.
The only maintenance is when someone runs into them, which happens quite often. But other than that, I mean, and we did budget for that.
Yeah.
But yes, it's the savings are there because it's not metered, it's accounted savings, and also because we shut them down at 2 a.m. rather than leaving them on all night, which
Yep.
was, no one noticed that either, so
Yeah.
that's good.
The other question then that leads me to the next step is, at what point are these streetlights going to become LED streetlights and then
Well,
save us
that's-
even further money?
The problem with that is the streetlights are owned by United Illuminating.
Okay.
And they have a new street LED rate, which which makes it impossible to replace the streetlights.
Okay.
They're saying that the cost of it's 27 cents a kilowatt hour for distribution, transmission, and maintenance is going to be the same for LED as it is for the regular lighting, which is totally outrageous.
Yeah.
But PUC approved it. No one knew they were applying for this.
Okay.
And they got it. So the only savings we could achieve would be other savings on the generation costs. But the cost of replacing those lights would be millions of dollars.
Okay.
So UI is guaranteed there won't be any savings.
But is this something you see down the line, the cost dropping and getting more realistic?
Well, see, the cost dropping doesn't matter if UI is going to charge us so much
Yeah.
rent. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rental charge.
Okay.
I mean, these lights last 20 years, 10 to 15 years versus the 2 or 3 years, but they don't, they're assuming they won't last. They'll have to replace every 2 or 3 years, and therefore the cost is even higher than,
Okay.
that's, unfortunately.
Any other questions on this? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Seeing none, thank you. Very much appreciated. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll get back, and we'll do the 2 Public Works and WPCA. Guys, we're back on. Sorry. All right. So we're going to turn to budget number 5011, Public Works Administration. Mr. Michelangelo and Mr. Bartlett are here. Good evening. Mr. Bowman is staying. Thank you. And let's go forward with this budget. We'll turn over to you guys.
Okay. The Public Works Administration budget is probably 96% salary, and it covers the 3 of us up here, a full-time secretary and part-time secretary in Town Hall, and the rest are, much smaller in scale for Public Works Administration.
Do we have questions on this budget? It's a 1.6% increase. Did notice there's overtime earnings this year, a lot more than last year. What's going on with that, just so that we're aware?
Well, historically, you see it's been 0.
Yes.
The former Public Works Secretary and the former Director, apparently whenever there was overtime involved, staying afterwards for, when the office work isn't done at 4:30, I believe she took comp time. There aren't great instances where where permits have to be out or the cash comes in late, but there are occasions for overtime. The spike that you see this year, I believe, is what you're seeing this year. It's largely a reflection of, and once again, the actuals are higher than that this year. But between the marina manager who works in our office but is not in this budget, was vacant for about 5 months. The recycling coordinator that Mr. Zimbruski mentioned was also vacant for about 3 months. And it was a good opportunity because we reworked both of those job descriptions to address some issues. But a lot of those works from that 2 vacant positions fell on the Public Works Administration staff. So you'll see a spike this year over and above the 2550. But based on the the amount of hours that I think we'll need for the office staff, that's what the 2520 is.
Said another way, you have a departmental assistant that you replaced. There was an agreement in place with that departmental assistant that, as opposed to getting overtime compensation, you can take comp time in lieu of overtime compensation. You now have a new person within that position, and they don't basically have to live by that old agreement, right?
Correct, and I think, this is the proper way to do it. I think the other one was just a informal
An
type
accommodation
informal type arrangement that worked for the old people.
for the other employee.
Old people. The former employees.
We all know.
The long
We know what you
tenure.
meant,
The
Joe.
long tenure.
And the educational increase is sensitivity training, is that it?
He said
So it is now, right? Maybe we need to double it.
I think it just reflects some of the, I think there's probably about 1 or 2 out-of-state trips that are taken, but once you get into those with a hotel or two, the fees go up quite dramatically. So that doesn't cover too many expenses, but, I think it's still reasonable and lets us get out there.
Any other questions on this budget? Mr. Walsh?
Just quickly, it's not a lot of money, but how did your postage drop so dramatically over the last couple of years?
The postage?
Yeah, it just kind of fell off, and it continues to.
I'm not sure what the spikes were in the other years. The majority of the mailings that were done is for the marina.
Okay.
The other major mailings that are done out of the Indy Hall office is done by, solid waste and recycling. That's out of their budget. So that would be my explanation for the only thing I could think of.
That's it.
Any other questions, comments, anyone? Mrs. McCarthy Vehy.
Thank you, gentlemen. Again, Scott, welcome to the table. I wanted to just comment on one of the bullets in the write-up, which talks about the clear definition of roles and giving employees a path to success. Are those new job descriptions or simply different kind of communication so that everybody understands who's doing what?
Well, I mentioned, every time we do have a vacancy, we take a look at the job description and see how that happens. But, in defining our roles here, our roles, intermingle a lot with like a Bill Hurley and our mid-managers and those people there. But, overall running the department, one of the things I see is, you steer the ship in the right direction. The people under us that are good people, they don't need to have their hands held. But a lot of times when, I think that's our job, to get them in the right direction, make them succeed in whatever they do. So that's the way I would characterize that.
Okay, so it's not that new job descriptions were written, maybe just a clarity of communication?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this budget? Seeing none, I'll go to the public. None from the public. We're done with that budget. Let's go to Public Works Operation, which is the majority of this area's budget, which is budget 5030. So let's start with the salary increase, which, based on what I'm seeing here, the vast majority of this is the settlement of the contract. Is that correct?
It's a settlement of the Public Works contract, and it's a 4-year settlement, equivalent to 6.25% overall.
Said another way, the budget for this year was understated because the contracts were not settled, and it was in contingency, and now it's been transferred over, correct?
I have not transferred anything to contingency. I'm just
From contingency, yeah.
reflecting in 15 the
Right.
known salaries.
I said it the wrong way, but
Right.
what I'm saying is, the budget here for this year, because those transfers have not been done,
Yes.
this
Correct.
budget for this year is understated.
Understated by 4 years' worth of salary
Right,
increases.
which is yet another reason we should be doing transfers as we go along when these contracts are settled as opposed to at the end of the year. So that when we get here, we're not looking at the large variations, correct? That's just it's a problem we're having with a lot of these budgets.
Yeah, we're in agreement, that's what he
15 is, but this current year is not.
Yes, right.
Right, and I'm saying that we should have transferred it when this contract was settled earlier this year, and then these numbers that are reflected of 14 would be the appropriate numbers, and then the actual differential would be 1 year.
Or not, depending on if they settle.
Okay, so since the large dollar amount of this number, can you go back and tell us what the appropriate 14 budget would be if we effected that transfer? So we know exactly on an apples-to-apples basis what the 1 year change in salary would be, if you don't mind. Because that 4.7% is misleading, only because it doesn't accurately reflect what the actual expenses can be in 14,
Right, because you're offset with other employees
with contingency.
or you're offset in the personnel summary with other employees who you don't have reflected a salary increase from year to year.
That's my point, right.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing. Cool. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Walsh.
In regards to staffing, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. What are AEOs?
Automotive equipment operators, they range from truck drivers through heavy equipment, street sweepers, payloaders, backhoes.
Okay, so we went down in numbers by 2 there, correct? From the last year's 14 budget to 15 budget?
Yes.
We're not filling those other 2 positions during the year or something else like that, right? We're going to stay with 27 during the year? During the upcoming new budget, 15 budget year?
You try to stay within there, but it's driven by demand of the workload. If we're ending up paying people out of classification, we can spike an additional operator. For example, we have 2 operators that are retiring. We'll reevaluate, one's from Parks, one's from Highway. We'll reevaluate their roles, and if that work can be absorbed, or if not, then we'll promote and there'll be no change. So it's a moving target. It's not really a hard, fast number. The union would always love it to be a hard, fast number, but we find it better to do our business based on our needs.
Okay. And then we go down to the foreman, and there's an increase, a new foreman for the 15 year, because we go from 5 to 6.
Let me just catch up to you where you are with the
So it's
four.
about 5 down or 6 down from the AEO.
Yep, I got you.
So we're adding a new foreman?
Yeah,
is that it?
that's a paving foreman in the highway department, correct.
Okay, so that's a new position you're proposing for this year?
Well, it's actually been filled already. There's contract language. He worked out of classification, and therefore he has the right to the promotion. So based on, again, years ago, we had multiple paving foremans. We cut that back. Now, based on workloads and the work we do, we're back up to 2 paving foremen in highway.
Okay. Now, is this somebody who would have been an AEO and moved up to foreman?
Correct.
Okay.
In this particular case, it was, but he could have been a maintenance repairman and moved up as well.
Okay. And then the laborer, about 5 down from that, or 4 down from that, we go up by 1 position?
Right.
Is that a similar thing where an AEO is moving to become a laborer or something else like that?
Well, again, the way we do it is entry level, even though they're considered laborers. They all have to get a CDL, which is a commercial driver's license, which then gives us the flexibility as managers to utilize them in the big trucks. Then, based on demand, we can move personnel up as we need it or move them down. The only caveat being, if we use them 120 days in a given year, then they walk into that position. So we're mindful and we document, what we're doing. But it's been a successful strategy. But those numbers will spike again, because if you just theoretically look at, if the 2 operators retire, theoretically we'll replace them with 2 laborers. So you'll see a potential downward trend in the operators, and an uptick in the labors, but then if we do decide to replace, then you'll see an advancement from maybe like a lower AEO up or a maintenance repairman up.
Okay. So under total full-time currents,
Mhm.
we stick at 74 as a total number.
If you're including the office staff, that is a correct number, yes.
Okay. Now.
That's everybody, that's the 8, well, there's actually 9 managers,
Mhm.
2 secretaries,
Yep.
and 63 working men.
Okay. Now, the laborers new, where there's these positions didn't exist in the current budget year, but you're proposing them for the new budget year. What are those 2 new laborers, and what's it for?
I thought I had requested 2 laborers.
That got cut.
Yeah, that cut, yeah. We had requested 2 additional laborers, and it's subsequently been cut.
And those,
I see. The first selectman reduced it to 0.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
that was, there was a reduction last year, I think, at the RTM level.
Yes.
So we had attempted to recoup those.
Actually, I believe it was at this board.
It was this
At this
Okay,
board.
I'm sorry. you're
So
correct.
all we did was keep the number the same. We did not replace those
Yeah.
bodies. And I think,
And that's
Mr.
where-
Walsh, that goes back to your
Yes.
question during the original First Selectman's budget presentation.
Yes, okay. And that was the discussion we had last year, where we raised contracted services a little bit,
Correct.
and basically were able to get rid of a couple of positions, correct?
Yes.
And how did that work out for you during this year?
Well, again, there's always spikes, and I think one of the things I'm most proud of is our personnel is cross-trained, that we're never going to be held hostage by a contractor. We can do the work that the outside contractors can do. So if there's favorable pricing, we can look at the private market. If it's unfavorable, we can rely on our personnel and move things that are more favorable over. I think right now, based on the economy, it's a good model. If things change and people aren't as hungry and they come in with higher prices, it may not be as a successful model. But right now, there's an awful lot of people willing to sharpen their pencil to get work done, and we're the beneficiaries of that.
And like all the grass cutting you mentioned last year is done by contracted services, because they can provide that
correct.
service for a lot less than we can provide it for internally.
Yep.
Correct, okay.
And for what it's worth, it's none of my, Board of Ed's following suit now as well. They've had some success with it, but this year they're all in. They're now privatizing all their lawn maintenance as well. It's been a successful model, and they're going to be joining.
And your contracted property services is slightly up, 1.2%, just a little bit up.
Yeah, and again, it's more favorable pricing. We're actually getting more work done, but we're not seeing a spike necessarily in the cost for that.
Good. Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Mr. DeWitt, and then we'll go to Mr. Becker.
Thank you. 2 things. I know we made a commitment to Mr. White years ago about paving, and it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make last year, taking that number down, because we stared you and Rich White in the eye and said, we're going to do this, and we didn't. What was the number we had committed to you? Because I see you put in for $4 million, and the first selectman reduced it to 3.
Yeah, it would be my understanding that based after the transition from bond to budget, that
Yep.
we would be at 3.75 million. That was my understanding. Then last year, it got cut to 2.7, so theoretically, I've asked for a $250,000 increase, which on paper transfers to $1,250,000 based on the previous cut.
Got it. Thank you. The other thing, I want to follow up on Mr. Walsh's comments about contracted property services. So last year, you started by saying, man, we're getting great contracts, everything's going great. And the first thing we said was, but, you still got 74 people. And then this year, you just said, well, when you get a good rate, they do the work. When they don't get a good rate, it appears as if there's double dip in there, right? I mean, what are these, so the guys who aren't mowing the lawn anymore, there's just something else for them to do. That's why we're we're consistently holding 74 people, is that the?
The variable you don't see, but we're introducing a new Q Alert work order system that will expand upon our workload. But what you don't see is whether it comes out of the pot of contractual services or out of the DPW workload, the work is real and the work gets done. We find, again, things that are easy to quantify and get a firm price, execute those via contract. Things that are more hit-and-run jobs, hard to isolate, or a contractor's going to try to have you over a barrel if there's a miscue, we'll do those with in-house services. But I think the spike that's the hard item to measure is the actual demand. There's plenty of work. For example, the RTM just the other night had brought up to me about litter on the beaches. Well, I can tell you right now, based on our program, we either have to move overtime up or privatize off-hour crews.
Sure.
But we have a very successful daylight program. We have a very successful weekend program. But the reality is, we leave our post at 3:30. We have made a deal with the lifeguards who leave the beaches at 6. They pick up the garbage at 5:30. We're covered great till then. People still enjoy the beach through the nighttime hours. Guess what? We inherit come daybreak.
Sure.
So one of the RTM members felt as if we're not doing a good job. I feel we are doing a good job, but if I don't cover the 6 o'clock to, say, 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening hours, the risk you run is that there's going to be litter on the beach. So those are things organizationally we have to look at. Are we going to withstand the complaints of the beach in June and July and August? Or are we going to potentially throw a crew out there in the evenings, maybe on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, our busiest time? Those are business decisions we make during the year based on demand.
Sure. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Becker?
Thank you. So just, may I miss it here, but the labor, has that been hired as well? Because you had said the foreman going up is just basically somebody transferring over, so that's 6 positions filled at this point. The labor I see goes from 11 to 12. Was that someone who, is that 12 now, or that's looking to go to 12?
No, everything that's in the 15, I would say, is actually there or in process. Again, if we're monitoring an employee who's working out of class, the assumption is he's going to get to that next position.
Gotcha. And then going over to the automotive equipment operator, again, so you said that's sort of a moving target. It went from 29, and it's 27. I mean, that's something that next year could be 28 or 26 or something to that effect. Do you actually also, in your kind of positioning through here, it says 27, but I mean, I may talk to you in September and you may be at 26 or 28 or something to that effect as well? Is that kind of where I'm getting there?
Yeah, it can.
It's just an always kind of moving, it's just, okay, because a lot of the other departments are very like firm sort of, but it offsets from somewhere else.
Yeah, we don't, selfishly, we don't like it firm. We like the fact that we can move personnel and supply ourselves with getting positions and jobs covered.
Yeah.
The contract language is pretty specific on what they can do, and again, the guys, to their credit, and basically the credit from when we hire them, you basically come in with all the credentials to do everything, and then given those opportunities, you go into those slots, and the jobs dictate those opportunities. For example, coming off of this winter, we'll run 4 street sweepers. I expect 3 backhoes out on the road. Well, there's 7 operators right there tied up. The rest of the AOEs are the truck drivers and all those. Well, the minute I run a topsoiling crew because of lawn damage, there's an 8th operator on a machine. So the number has upticks, to it.
But just gotcha. No, and I think we're used to that in the functions in a lot of ways, but not always in the specific lines. I understand you have probably, if you're the largest, but you may be the largest personnel when you count up all the part-times and whatnot.
Right.
But most of the departments are sort of, this is what we have, and then someone goes up, then we go in, and these are our numbers, versus sort of juggling through the year like you would on other parts of the budget. So that's why I'm just trying to get a better handle when we're talking about adding an account in a particular line item, because a lot of times you want to keep those, in theory, you want to keep those more flat. But I think that makes sense, so thank you.
And we're going to go over to Mrs. McCarthy-Vega.
Thank you. You mentioned Q Alert. Could you tell us a little bit about that and in what ways you think that will impact your workload and what that will mean for the flow of business?
Well, I hope it doesn't impact the workload in the sense that it's work that we have to do. The mechanism of Q Alert is essentially just that a resident can now call in or email in, and then they can chart the response. So in terms of a communication level, that's its most success. The workload, the way we always perceive our workload is simple. If there's 100 items that have to be paved out there because they're potholes, regardless of whether we're hearing about it from our own observations, police reports, or the residents, it doesn't diminish the fact that we have to go out and patch the 100 potholes. So I think the biggest saver for us, or the biggest factor, is just the communication back to the residents, so I don't have a foreman having to come in every night and, physically get on the phone and call somebody back. They can chart, the message was received, it was evaluated, the course of action, when it shut out, what took place. So I think that's the saving grace. I suppose like anything else, you have your spikes. Again, you're not patching potholes very securely now, so I assume there'll be more pothole tickets in the next 30 days. Once the asphalt plants open, the weather improves, we'll catch back up on that workload fairly quick.
So in some sense, the physical work that's being done in terms of maintenance, for example, with a pothole, that isn't changing, but there is an administrative efficiency that's happening in terms of tracking that and communicating back to the residents.
Yeah, and I think the communicating back to the residents is the key thing, because we did have a work order system, but only we knew where we stood. Now, the beauty of Q Alert is not only that the resident, again, is kept abreast of what's happening, but the First Selectman's office can look at it, Joe can look at it, anybody can look at it at any given time and kind of reference where we are.
And how long have you been operating under that system?
I think Q Alert is just hitting the public as we speak, but we've done it in-house about 3 months now.
Great.
Yeah,
And
maybe
that's
4 months.
part of the new website, maybe this is to you, Mr. First Selectman. It's part of the new website rollout, and my understanding is that this will be across many departments and coming soon.
Correct. We've basically been operating it inside the company or the organization for the past 4 or 5 months. We expect the new website to roll out in the next couple of months, and that will then allow residents to kind of enter their own complaints or issues, and we'll be able to track that. The nice thing is, from an operational standpoint, no matter where the call comes, it can be entered by somebody in Parks and Rec, and when it's coded as a paving item or a pothole item, it goes directly to the DPW people, the same as if somebody had called DPW. So we're no longer bouncing residents around. You don't have to call back to get another department. We put it directly to where it is. And you're right, there's kind of a planned escalation within that so that the items get addressed on a timely basis.
I just want to note, I think that's a great improvement, and thanks for the information in terms of the workload level, so I appreciate that.
Any other questions on that? All right, I'm going to go to a question that I have to the First Selectman. We all understand what happened with the asphalt. We understand that we were in a step process to start funding that through the operating budget, pulling it out of capital. Obviously, plans get revised as economic circumstances dictate. What's the current plan to get us to the funding level that we had discussed a couple of years ago on paving?
Yeah, when we looked at that paving, and we both were part of that discussion, that was really what I'll call a single-point discussion. We only talked about the paving issue. We didn't talk about contributions to surplus, contributions to the internal service fund, increases in senior tax relief, and a number of the other things that have happened since then that put strain on the budget. So the goal is to look at continuing to increase this each year in the 250 to 500 range till we get up to the 3.75. We had been talking about 3.5 million, if I remember back when we discussed this.
That's what I remember.
And Scott's memory, as he recalls,
I have
is better than ours, and he remembers it at 3.75.
Just to note, he asked for 4 million, so next year I fully anticipate this will be 4,250,000.
I think his
Well, if
math,
you guys go one way, I'm going to go.
his math skills work exceedingly well.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, are you saying that the goal is 250 a year, and we're going to be at 3 million, so you're looking at 3 more years till we're at the 3,750,000 that we talked about?
A minimum 250 between that and 500 based on the other strains on the budget, correct?
Over to you, Mr. Bartlett. What is that doing? You know, we could get into a whole discussion, which I don't want to have, regarding the roads and what's happened with the weather.
Right.
Right? But what are you finding with, each year we do continue to increase the investment here. What are you finding that's allowing you to do? Are you catching up? Are you falling behind? Where do you stand in that?
I think we're catching up on our maintenance end in terms of sealing good roads, but we still have catch-up to do to rebuild poor roads. And then, again, I know you don't want to get into a whole paving symposium, but basically, if we stay with the 3 million, we'll work with it, but some of the roads I will do aren't the worst roads. I'm going to catch some of the better roads with that money, because my worst road's going to cost me X this year, and it's going to cost me X next year. But the good road's going to cost me X this year, but might go up to Y next year. So, whatever we're dealt in the budget, we'll readjust our paving strategies to make the best use of it.
And what's gone, one of the things when, whether it was 3.5 or 3.75, that was based on a cost per square mile, based on what was going on in the asphalt market at that time.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
What's going on in that market now? Are we getting the bang for the buck? Have the prices come down? Have they stayed the same? Have they gone up?
They have gone up, but we've also now introduced probably 5 or 6 different paving techniques that we do. So as much as that's gone up, we don't do as much of that as we used to. We do more, just, again, I don't want to get into a paving symposium on you, but we will do cold mix paving, which basically takes the expensive hot asphalt out of the equation. So it's similar machining, but basically you're using milled products that you take off the road, recycle it, put that on in your base, and then put a thinner hot mix on top, and you're getting like a 25 or 30% reduction in the cost of that process.
So are you getting more done than you thought you would get done originally?
My goal, if I had my way, and don't everybody fall over, I'm working on an equation to show everybody, but I take our road miles as 275 miles, and we've always sold that on a width of 30 feet. I then rolled our parking lots, because to me, if you go into many of the parking lots, they're the ones in disrepair. So to make sense of it, I rolled those into the same, I took the square yardage and rolled it in and said we're at 288 miles. What we'd like to hit as a goal is 288 miles of work done every year. Now, that doesn't mean we're paving 288 miles. What it means is Procedure A gives me a lifespan of 4 years. So if I do 10 miles and I rate it at 4 years, that's the equivalent of 40 road miles accomplished. Another procedure gives me 10 years, and I did 10 miles, 10 times 10, 100, and our baseline is 288. Last year, I hit 227 miles. So you can see I'm a little below where I want to be.
Okay. Thank you for the honest answer and the explanation. Hang on, I think I had, Mrs. Leclerc, did you have your hand up? You're good? We'll go over to Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
This winter has been extremely difficult. Is it worse than in past years? And do you expect that that's going to have a harder hit on the jobs ahead?
I do think it's worse than previous years, but I also think the roads look the worst they're going to look right now. I think we can get out there in the spring. If we have a good dry spring, we can catch back up. So it's not, the world's not collapsing on Fairfield if we don't move the paving number, up. I mean, again, you give me the money, I'll work it. If we don't have the money, I'll still work it. But I don't think we're going to use the winter as leverage to get more money, no.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Walsh? I'm going to you.
Did we fall behind because of Storm Sandy and the amount of roads we had paved, because we had to put money into other programs? Or did we get what we wanted paved for that time period, after that time period, that what we wanted to get accomplished?
I don't really think Sandy affected us,
Right.
because,
Okay.
the timing on Sandy was such that we had our season pretty much done before Sandy, and then we're jumping in the spring theoretically with next year's money, so I don't believe Sandy impacted us, no.
Couple of questions regarding some numbers. What's pay differential, and why is that up like almost 20%?
We actually have currently 6 employees that have pay differential. 2 are mechanics, they're on a mechanical shift. The theory.
What is pay differential?
All right, pay differential is an incentive to work off-hour shifts. So the mechanics, for example, don't work a typical 7 to 3:30 shift that the rest of the department works. They work an early shift. The advantage we like about that is when we close out the day at 3:30, the foreman will record repairs of equipment that's needed the next morning. Instead of the 7 o'clock crew addressing that and then the crew potentially being held back, the 5 o'clock crew will take on those repairs, and at 7, we go out the door. The bigger part of it is 4 weekend gentlemen, and we pay them a shift differential because theoretically, their week is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Their weekends become Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So it's 6 total people that work outside the normal framework of DPW hours.
Okay. Fees and professional services go up 22.4%. Is that did that get cut back from what your departmental request was last year? I'm having a hard time remembering.
No, it didn't honestly get cut back, but what we're really finding is everything today is a world of documentation. A simple thing like even though we don't put out winter sand, if you look along the roads because of the type of winter we had, there's a lot of debris along the roads. Properly, we can sweep it, no problem. We can put it in a pile, no problem. But the minute we touch it and we go to put it somewhere, it's considered contaminated. The theory is that it has asphalt mixed into it. So what we have to do now as a responsible organization is test that material and dispose of it properly. And that's all outside firms that do the testing, potentially, we may truck it to save money, but it will go off-site for an additional fee.
Why is the water line up 56%? Are we using more water, or is the price of the water we're using more expensive?
I think if you really look at the actuals in the previous years, I think we were below what we should have been in previous budgets. But it's also true to what you just said. For example, One Rod Highway, which is the main road that leads to our complex, was always a gift from Aquarian Water Company. And we took full advantage of that gift. They essentially said you can load up all the equipment, you can run at Fairfield and go out and do your work. Well, obviously, you enhance paving or increase paving, and all our contractors come in and I have them tap that hydrant. Well, the Aquarian says to us, well, guess what? We still will work with you, so I have to put a meter now on that hydrant, and I basically get, if it's a town sweeper, there's no charge, but if it's a contractor, there's a charge. So whether I put that charge off to the contractor, then that's going to increase his cost, and I'll get less things done, so we take that increase on.
And that's just a new requirement within the last
It's been
year?
the last couple of years, actually, yeah.
But to your point, just before we move on from this, in 11 it was 116, in 12 it was 117, in 13 it was 121.7. So you're just going with 125. It looks like the anomaly was last year where it was cut to 80, is that?
I would say that's fair, yes.
And I think
And
that
you're
was,
going to
a-
exceed that this year, probably?
Oh, I'm afraid so.
I think that was a wrong number.
All right. I didn't mean to
No, no
interrupt,
problem.
Mr. Walsh, but go ahead.
This might be slightly off topic, but it goes to one of your supplies. This new spray stuff that you guys spray on the roads, you find it effective? Do you find it saves money for the town by using that?
I think I look at it multiple ways. I look at it, again, as public safety.
Yes.
I look at it in terms of public expectation. I look at it that when we perfect it, it will absolutely bring us savings because you can pre-treat with a liquid at Monday at noon at straight time, where without that tool in the toolbox, you'll be going out Monday night at 10 o'clock when the snow falls. We have perfected it to a point, but we're really not there yet. And I say that in the sense that we have to get some of the equipment calibrated in order to have it perfectly perfected. But I do see more upside than downside. I know there's rhetoric in terms of what's it doing to the infrastructure, what's it doing to vehicles, but the truth be told, salt, which has always been used as a de-icer, is the main component that damages all the infrastructure. Whether you put it in a granular form or a liquid form, it's still the fact that the salt sitting on a frame of a truck is going to take its toll. We have a fairly aggressive campaign in terms of pre-season treating our trucks. During the events we treat them, post-season treating them. With that said, they're still going to show some wear because obviously they're dispensing the material. They're probably not getting washed in a timely manner in terms of in between storms. But we feel we can manage our equipment pretty well with it.
Chief Fellner suggested possibly that and he showed some documentary evidence with some photos, that there's a possibility that some of that stuff might be more corrosive, and that's why some of their fire trucks are needing to be replaced maybe sooner. From your knowledge of this substance that you're using, does it have is it more highly corrosive than salt or something else?
It's all chloride-based, but again, if you do go into like the magnesiums, they are more aggressive, but it's still the chloride that does the affecting of the metal or the corroding of the metal. I've seen those pictures, and truthfully, I bet you if I took those pictures 10 years earlier, those trucks were rusty, and if I take a picture of a truck today and take it 10 years from now, it's going to have rust on it. I mean,
But you guys aren't seeing any studies or suggestions, like, because I know the state of Connecticut uses it on their highways and whatever, but there's no suggestion that it's causing more highly corrosive,
Again, I think the salt is what's the real, I don't think it's directly correlated to the liquid, to answer your question. I think it's salt-based.
If I might just expand on that a bit, one of the things that Scott and Joe mentioned in our discussions is that all the states north of here use a lot more salt. I was talking with a state official earlier this week, and they said Massachusetts uses literally twice as much per mile as we do in this state. I think one of the things that Joe and Scott have done, as we saw it towards the end of the storms, we were one of the few towns around here that didn't run out of salt in the pretreatment. Now, we did come close, but we didn't run out. And I think that's due in part to their management and strategic view on how they pre-treat for the storms, not to overdo it.
I only have equipment questions.
Please.
Jump in.
Absolutely. And then we'll go to Mr. Becker.
I'd like to turn to the, your capital requests. And I see some of these are, I've kind of gone through them because I know a number of these got cut from the previous year. So some of them are popping back up again, which would be a natural thought, because clearly if you needed it last year and you didn't get it, how could you not need it this year? So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions in regards to these. Obviously, number one is just regular small equipment. It's $35,000 for various small pieces of equipment, weed whackers, whatever you guys need, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
and that's the same request you'd gotten last year. Number two, you didn't get last year. It's the exact same thing you're asking for. My only question, I guess, is it says last year, in last year's budget book, it said that the machine had 12,800 hours, and this year it says it still has 12,800. Were we not able to use that piece of equipment because it was so old and
It's down, yes.
it's been down the whole year?
Yes.
Okay, great. Number three, the maintenance vans. Last year you requested a maintenance van, but it's not the same maintenance van. So I guess the question is, why didn't you come back for that replacement? I don't know if you remember this.
I don't remember, but did we
There was
get
something called a maintenance van replacing number 176 FA, a 1991 Chevy with 107,000 miles, which got zeroed out. It says the van has extensive body rot and is no longer worth fixing. Did we end up getting rid of that van? And therefore, it's just out of, you don't even have it anymore?
Yeah.
But you need two vans?
I don't know, but I can tell you this, we got a gift from the Aquarian Water Company, donated a van, so we did sideline one, but I don't know if it was this one.
Okay.
One white van we run around town with is Aquarian's former van. But I
That's,
can get
uh,
back to you, I don't know where we stand with 176.
And again, just to expand on that, that's a program that Aquarian has offered us to take a look at equipment that they are looking at getting rid of, and they've made those lists available. We get to DPW and see if we can appropriate those, if you will. So it's a really, I think, great way for Aquarian to make a contribution to the communities they serve.
And the supervisor's SUV you'd requested last year, which also got zeroed out. You're looking for just a replacement of that. Last year it said it had 150,000 miles. Now it says under 50. Is that another piece of equipment that you guys had to sideline?
This one, believe it or not, went into our seasonal pool.
Okay.
It wasn't reliable for a Monday through Friday, year-round.
Okay.
But we did have seasonal staffing, because basically, in some cases, when we have extra seasonal staff in the summer, they can use it as transport to a field to do field maintenance and things of that nature. But it's the same vehicle, but it wasn't utilized all year-round.
The sidewalk replacement is similar to what we had requested and the amount was what was approved last year. And this is separate than the sidewalks that were in the capital projects amount that was approved, correct?
Correct. If you look at it, it's where it's targeted. And, Joe, do you want to pick this up? Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, one of the benefits, so the 80,000 has been fairly consistent over the last several years.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we found ourselves doing was spending inordinate percentage of it downtown. So when we got 80,000, we'd spend 40% of it in the downtown areas, which meant we only had limited to spend all around town. So one of the benefits, extreme benefits of the, the 100,000 dedicated for the capital downtown sidewalks is that this money will be able to use on existing sidewalks in non-downtown areas. So it should go a lot further than it did in previous years, even though it's the same amount.
To follow up on that, can I make a request that we set up a new budget line item? Much like we have a capital outlay for road paving, can we put a capital outlay line item in for sidewalks? Because we had discussed this at that capital planning thing, that we wanted to start treating our sidewalk program more like we were treating the paving program. So if we could segregate that out from regular capital outlay, which quite frankly I view more as equipment and vehicles to help the department versus infrastructure investment.
Good.
Please.
Tom, if I may also,
Yeah.
in follow-up to your statement, we are also in the process of inventorying all the sidewalks, so we're going to have a new baseline. We'll be able to say, here's 110 miles of sidewalk, this percentage is in, great shape, this percentage is medium, fair, poor, et cetera.
That's exactly what we
Yeah.
want to see, very similar
Right.
to the roads.
That's the plan that I'd ask them to put together with, on a sidewalk basis, much like we've done with the paving. You're absolutely correct. So adding it into the budget line, I think, puts it more as an ongoing maintenance item, and I think that's important to see going forward.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Stone, you had a comment, I think, on this, right?
Actually, you were heading in my direction. Well, we don't know yet how many miles of sidewalk that really have to be replaced, right, or repaired.
Unfortunately, that's a fair statement,
All
yes.
Because my feeling is, on the sidewalks at least, a lot of them are really, really bad. And I was just wondering if we could get that number and maybe just 1 year, I hate to use the word bond it, but bond it and get it all done, because you do have liabilities with the sidewalks. So that's where I'm heading.
Yeah, I think that what we should do is put together the plan.
Yep.
Right.
Have that inventory of kind of A, B, and C and what's needed, look at what we can put in the budget going forward, and then make a decision about, do we need a catch-up component of that? But I think we want to have all the information laid out.
Right.
But that's certainly one of the discussion points we want to have.
And by the way, part of the catch-up component, we already did with what we bonded earlier this year. That was part of that plan.
Correct, that covered 15% of the worst of downtown.
Right. Mr. Walsh,
Just
back to you.
the last two pieces of equipment, 7 and 8, are brand-new pieces of, or they seem to appear to be brand-new that weren't requested in the previous year at all. This tire balance machine, do you guys currently have one, or is this cheaper just to bring this in-house because you were having to send tires out to be balanced someplace else?
The truth is, we have had one.
Okay.
But we inherited it from the police department, and it is antiquated. It's a coin flip. It's the reason it's the last priority. If we don't wish to have it, we can survive and outsource it. But we try to do the smaller repairs in-house, so we would find it handy.
And a smaller repair would be changing a tire.
Correct.
Yeah.
And basically on everything up to like a medium-sized truck. We don't do the bigger six-wheel dumps and higher.
Okay.
In the Versa bucket, for what it's worth, we run 4 payloaders, 2 brush buckets we currently own. They've both been welded over the years, and it's, time to up the ante with one new one. But they're very complementary in terms of not just responses in storms, but we'll go out and pick up logs and brush and roadside debris with them. They're called a brush bucket or a Versa bucket, but they pick up virtually anything.
And based on the capital, what I call non-recurring capital requests that were going to be bonded, plus this equipment that you're asking now, if you got it, do you think that your, basically the machinery that you need to operate your department would be pretty caught up?
I think it's a great step in the right direction. I don't think we'll be caught up. Mike has us working on, similar to the paving, a replacement program, and we really have the framework established. We're just putting the, boundaries on it a little bit, tightening it up. I'd feel more comfortable once that program's laid out. Everybody will see where we are, the age of the fleet, what we feel it does to us. Again, this is a great kick in the right direction, but there's been many lean years. So this year alone, I ran some of our primary trucks on snow are 30 years old, 1984 Max up in Greenfield Hill. Again, they worked, but if I had my druthers, they would be backup trucks or pre-treat trucks during the day. Those trucks did make it for most storms, but when you get that call out as the mechanic, midnight, and it happened to us up on Morehouse Highway, the truck tranny went, and, it's tough.
I think the short form answer to that, Jim, is no, what we did this year does not catch us up. It moves us closer, but we really need that plan put together to see exactly how far behind. There was some charts put together, very simplistically, that showed the age of a number of the vehicles, and they were excessive in that regard. The life cycle of each vehicle changes a little bit based on the type of use, the type of vehicle that. So I think we need the more comprehensive plan put together to look exactly where we are, and then we can talk about what the approach is to getting caught up.
So there is a possibility that you'll be doing the exact same thing and coming to us with non-recurring capital again for a number of vehicles next year.
I think we'll put together the plan and then look at what it would take to catch up and see if any of that's needed.
Okay. Because at some point, kind of like we did with catch-up programs like the paving, I would expect that after I see the plan and whatever, that dump trucks go back into your regular budget and part of your capital. And I understand that we've had a couple of lean years because of some tough economic times, and unfortunately, some of your equipment was exposed because they were large ticket items, and I got one last year myself. So, where I was just like, I think it was a 40-year-old piece of equipment. I said, can you get 41 years out of it? You know what I mean? So, but it was just a tough budget year.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I would expect, I'm just telling you, and this is all a personal thing for me, that I would like to get it back into your budget so that we are expensing it as you use it, as opposed to bonding it every year, because I have a problem with the bonding and everything, because then it's basically, we're paying for the cost plus interest costs at a certain point.
Certainly on a recurring basis, I think you're absolutely correct. I think the issue here is, this isn't something that caused over 2 years.
No.
Vehicles didn't get 19 years old because we didn't do something for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a much longer problem than that. I think we also need not only just the age, I think, but the use of the vehicle to know kind of what the expected life is. And to answer your question, probably everybody's, is, can you get another 2? Can you get another 4 out of that at any point? We've gotten, obviously, some great life out of the vehicles we're driving in. But I think we need the plan put together. Then we go back and look at that and look at what it means on an annual basis from a capital standpoint, and identify if there is some additional catch-up we'd like to do with that and how we might approach that, but that would be a discussion we'll have.
Anything else, Mr. Walsh? No. We'll go to Mr. Becker. Thank you for being patient.
Yeah, no, that, coming last or towards the end, most of my questions have already been answered, so I think I've only got 2.
Okay, moving on. No.
Thanks. So, the maintenance and repair of equipment. So, with the fact that we've just kind of given that bonding request for more equipment, we're going to see some of that older fleet, and assuming some of these other items, we're going to see some of those gone now. We're still seeing a little bit of an increase on that end? I mean, or...
David, you're not going to see that equipment go. This year, when we said we had like 25 trucks to plow, we had 25 trucks to plow, meaning when a truck went down, we now plowed the town with 24. And when the second truck went down, we plowed the town with 23. These new equipment will all be frontline snow and frontline year-round apparatus, but the older trucks are going to be rebuilt and put in snow. So when we say we have 25 trucks on the first one that goes down, he's taking rolling stock out, and we're back up to 25 trucks. I don't expect to bench.
So until we get further along in that plan, but then at some stage, the hope would be that we can start cutting down the expenditures on the repairs because we've got the newer fleet. But you're saying at this point, we're so bare bones, we're still going to need the money. Okay.
And also, just to echo that, going back to Mr. Walsh's point, when you pre-treat, it's different equipment. It's a similar dump truck, but it's like a tank that you mount and put liquid on it. And you're pre-treating 8 hours on a Monday. A different truck is equipped with a different salting mechanism that night. Now, we can certainly strip the old truck if we want with the tank, but now you're not pre-treating for 8 hours. You're unrigging and re-rigging your truck. So some of the same old trucks are going to go into a pre-treat fleet, and I think that will pay dividends long-term as well.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Wanted to make sure.
And then just getting back on the paving side, one of the things that we had done the first couple of years was we still had some of the bonding that was being phased kind of out along with the increases in the capital, and it was sort of supposed to work together. But you're past that bonding point now, and you're just living within the budget. I mean, so is that also sort of having an impact in there? Because the number, in theory, was propping the number up. So the number really isn't the same as it's been. The numbers, not only have your expenses gone up, but the number has gone down because there's no more bonding offset to keep it up in that higher range. So that, I guess that's just sort of an area, I don't want to see us go out and bond to prop it up any longer, because I kind of want to see it in the budget, but I do respect, the constraints in the budget that are doing this, but it makes me a little concerned when I see that number. It's not even flat, it's now negative from where you've been the last few years with more demands.
Well, hang on just a sec, though. I mean, I get your point, but on the asphalt paving line, in 2011, we were at 500,000, then we went to 1.5, then we went to 2.5, then we went to 2.75. I mean, we have dramatically increased within the operating budget to offset what's gone along.
Yeah, but I think what his point is, though, the same year as that was going up, the bond was going down. So you would take the 1.7 and say $1 million in bond, and theoretically you had 2.7 that given year.
And ta-da, we're at 2.7 now. So
Well, I mean, that was just an example. The fact is, we were at a 3.7 average. But again, I'll go back to what I
That's what I was
said.
getting at, yeah.
I'll go back to what I said earlier to you. We will continue to use the different processes we can with the money that we're allotted. And again, I would say to you, a decade ago, we would proudly announce that we are going to take care of the worst roads first. I will now tell you that we are going to maintain the better roads, because a road that's bad is going to cost me the same to rebuild next year as it is this year. So based on funding, we will make those decisions.
Does that help, David?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know you guys do what you can there, and I know that you're much more proactive. I think you've added, 2 or 3 more techniques since the last time that we went through, all the presentations.
We're always
I guess, my question / point in all of it is just recognizing that that when you take that capital bonding portion out, that we are actually down, not even flat, which is, I guess, to me, is concerning, long term, obviously, so.
Yeah,
thank you.
as a measure of the innovation that Scott and Joe have, Scott's pointed out that different cities around the region in the tri-state area will call up and say, how do you do this? Can we come up and study what you're doing in terms of road maintenance and extending life and how you handle it?
We should charge a fee.
I know, it's Bartlett University is what we're calling it. It's not online, but it is hands-on.
We'll train them, and they'll come up and do some roads for us, right?
But Mike, to your point, and we're not getting the press we deserve on it, but just the local municipalities that have been here. Westport's trying our procedures next year. New Canaan's tried it. Monroe's been down. Further reaches, Rocky Hill just came down and did a bond, and they're doing stuff that we've proven has worked. We are one of the leaders in the paving industry out there.
Thank you. Great job.
I'm good, thank you.
You're good?
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to go to Mrs. Leclerc, who's been quiet.
I just had a question. This year, we pulled out of the budget and bonded it separately, a lot of the larger vehicles. And I voted against it, not because I didn't think we needed them, but because I think they belong in the budget book. So what my question to you is, looking at the capital budget now, we're still kind of in the same ballpark, even with those larger items out of the budget. So my question is, what should our annual capital be each year to keep your department running efficiently?
I see Mike grabbing the mic.
Yeah, I really think that's the question that putting together the comprehensive plan for equipment replacement is going to answer.
Is what?
The equipment replacement plan that I've asked Joe and Scott to put together will specifically address that point. We need that plan together to kind of answer how we're going to look at that going forward.
In other words, you don't know at the current point until you put the plan together and understand exactly what the replacement plan is going to be, how much you should spend per year annually going forward.
Correct. It's not like there's 270 miles of road, you basically are putting asphalt on every mile of road, so within all the techniques, Scott's got a better handle on that. We've got such a wide range of equipment and the use of the equipment, and we phase it, much like fire, there's frontline equipment, as you heard Scott talk about, and then secondary equipment and how things are brought in and out. So I think that we're going to take a very hard look at that, but I think they've got to pull together the details and see where we are, set priorities for what we need to replace, and then we can come back and answer that.
Okay, I guess that's fair. I sort of thought they probably have a feel for that because they know what they have, what equipment, but, all right.
And not drawing a conclusion of, but just the total value of the fleet is, if it was all new, is in the, $17, $18 million range. So without coming to a number, you could sort of, get in the ballpark of what you need to maintain that over years.
And in fairness, we cut back the number that you requested last year, so when we look at what the 2014 budget was, that is what we had approved and not what you guys had requested for the annual spend.
I think you can probably apply that guideline to many years going back. And I don't mean this board, I think, I'm talking collectively as a town.
Okay.
Two things. Mike, do you see this being similar to the fire department's report that they gave us this year?
Okay.
On their vehicle replacement program?
Yeah, I think the fire department is a much simpler
Yeah, it is
plan,
a
just
lot
because
simpler.
there's fewer
Yeah.
pieces of equipment,
And
longer
types of
lead
equipment,
time,
yeah.
custom, and so theoretically, conceptually, the answer is absolutely. That's exactly what it is. I just see this as a little more complex, and I think we're further behind here. The fire department, we can catch up with a couple of pieces of equipment. This, I'm very concerned about the average age of the fleet versus what they'd like the different pieces of equipment to be at as we move through it. So my hesitancy in jumping to a number is the average age of the fleet and where we are here. So that's where I'm uncomfortable at the moment. That's why I'm looking for the replacement plan to put together, spread that out, and see how much trouble we can avoid by just, in some cases, just spreading it out, just not buying everything we need right away, but how can we prioritize those pieces of equipment that either from an operator safety standpoint or an overall public safety standpoint or just a maintenance standpoint, we put those up at the front of the line and how that lets us work through it. Then what we do over the next 5 years may be dramatically different than a normal replacement plan. So we may have to go from a catch-up point into a more normal replacement plan, regardless of how we fund it. There may be just, pieces of equipment we're replacing because of the shape they're in, not because if we're on a normal cycle, we do them that quick.
And I just think this board's going to have to keep in mind, as we go to that plan, whatever that is, including putting it back in the operating budget, that their operating budget could increase by larger amounts than, as a department, because we would be restoring some of these larger pieces into their budget. So, we could be seeing some greater, if you look at them as a department, instead of seeing 4.1, we start putting large pieces in this back in, it's going to go up a little dramatically because of all the stuff that was not here
And
this
I
year.
think that plan, we're going to have to present certainly to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, but also the RTM, so everybody's got a flavor for what we're doing, so we don't, turn around and then catch ourselves back up into this.
All set? We go to Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you. So as a follow-up to that, I think my takeaway is that should any of the bodies choose to cut this year, any of these capital items, even though we've had the bonded items go forward, we're going to be even farther behind. So just my other follow-up is more of a comment, and perhaps I should have done this when Bill was here, but it's back to the sidewalks. I'm very much in support of this budget and glad to see that we have the other program going on. And I know that Joe and Bill have also been working with the bike pedestrian group, who is, I think, hoping to become a more permanent group to help assist and coordinate in that effort in terms of identifying need and working with the department. And I want to thank our DPW and engineering departments for the work that you've done with that. It's been excellent.
Thank you. And In full disclosure, Chief Fellner did tell us that you would be willing to take the cut to your budget based on the salt is causing his trucks to. I hope he cleared that with you.
Yeah. We're
Okay.
all good. We're all good.
Good.
Can I also just throw out one more thing, just for a point of reference for any of you that could make time in your
Want to
busy
get the
lives?
police in on this now?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I want to show you how our pavement strategy is working. I want to ask you, and I know everybody is busy in their lives, but go up Jefferson Street and take a right on Park Avenue. Travel the entire length of Park Avenue. When you do so, you're in Fairfield and you'll be looking at the Bridgeport side. In my days with Highway, I paved full width of those roads and we got reimbursed by Bridgeport. We did maintenance, they did not. Please look at the lane difference and then you'll see why we ask for the funding. Our road, is it impeccable? No. Does it have some cracking? Yes. Does it have potholes, delaminations, peeling, rutting? No. Does their side? Yes. Please, the picture's worth 1,000 words. I can tell you all I want, but if you take that 5-minute ride, you'll see your maintenance dollars at work, and I beg you to do it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bartlett.
If we can get one of their pieces of equipment and all go over together.
Yes. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns on this budget from board members? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Any from the public? Seeing none, we're back to the board. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. We appreciate it. We are done with this budget, and we're going to page 313, Water Pollution Control Authority.
You don't need me, right?
Yeah. Mr. Bowman. Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time tonight. Mr. Michelangelo, go right ahead.
Okay, the WPCA budget is approximately $5.2 million, largely supported by the sewer user fees that are paid by the users of the system, the residential, commercial, industrial properties. It's a slight increase over previous years. Some of the major drivers, salary, electricity, and some capital outlays. This was brought before the Water Pollution Control Authority at their January meeting. They reviewed it and they approved the requested items.
So let's just call it out right now on the regular payroll line, a 4.8% increase. This, however, is misleading because you have many people here with a contract settlement where the 2014 budget number has not been adjusted, but 2015 has. Is that correct? Okay, so can we, again, like the other one, get kind of a clarification of the 2014 actual expense projected on this line item versus the 2015, so we can get a more accurate assessment of the year-over-year differential on the salary line? All right, I'll turn it over to board members now. 2 items for me, overtime and seasonal payroll. Why are they going up so much?
Okay.
Is overtime the same issue with the rate differential?
Yes.
Yes, it's the same issue, the 6.4, that's just the differential plus the overtime earnings on that. What's going on with the seasonal payroll here? It's up virtually 100%.
Seasonal, there's it's an opportunity to get, labor at a lower rate. The desire would be to put college student-type people in the laboratory with the chemists, and we think it would add, be beneficial to do that. So it wasn't specifically spelled out, but that's what the increase was for.
But I don't know, so basically it's to hire more seasonal people so they can learn?
Well, nope. So they could do work. They could do work for us at a low salary wage.
So where are we seeing the savings that you're getting by hiring those people at a low salary to do some work that otherwise would be compensated by somebody, or accomplished by somebody else?
It would get the information out quicker from the laboratory. There is a heavy demand on the lab. There is some stuff they have to farm out, and we think it would be beneficial.
Okay. What about, if people don't mind, what about fees and professional services? Was that a budget error last year? You were at 184, now you're going up to 202, which is closer to where you were in 13.
I wouldn't say it was a budget error, it was reduced. The superintendent, Mike Fenoya, does a lot of the work for this budget. He had hand surgery the other day. He wasn't here. I could check specifically why that is the abnormality, but just, in general, wastewater treatment is probably as complex as anything the town of Fairfield or any town does.
Oh, I'm sure.
So there is consultants involved in, just about every process that goes on down at the wastewater treatment plant.
Can you get back to us on that then, since he's out with the hand surgery?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And what is remind us, I see that it was here last year. There's a new line item, I don't remember it. My apologies, but II Correctional Impro, what is that one?
Okay. Well, that is to remove extraneous flow from the sanitary sewer system. So I&I is inflow and infiltration. And what that does to our sewer system and a lot of sewer systems, it robs you of capacity. So, and because parts of our sewer system are 75, 80 years old, many of the lines have more clean water getting into the pipes than actual sewage. So the exercise is that when you could remove it, if it cost you less to remove it and remove that flow than just to treat it, you do construction methods to remove inflow and infiltration. So this will specifically target removing flow, so we have more capacity for our residents' businesses.
Did we just start doing this last year?
We've done it over the years. I believe we've done it through various means over the years. This is one of the locations where it was identified. I think it was put into this budget. And once again, we budget to remove inflow and infiltration, and we also collect revenue from new users to our system to abate I&I. So if you're a new user to the system and you propose to input 10,000 gallons of flow, we charge you an abatement charge to make you remove 10,000 gallons of flow. We don't put the requirement on them. We make them give them the funds, and then we remove that.
Can you guys help
Tom?
me in the revenue lines to find that? Where is that? You guys have that in here in the revenue lines?
Should be.
Page 54? I don't see it. WPCA, okay. I only see $90,000 in revenue here on page 52. What am I missing?
Okay.
Revenue for WPCA does not come into the general fund, so it won't be represented on these pages here.
Why do we have WPCA revenue listed then here?
They have other items in your Public Works budget, revenue items, if you want to just go and address those, Joe, on page 52.
Okay, we can do that separately. I'm just,
Okay, yeah, but this isn't associated with the department WPCA.
could we see a full P&L on this, then, on WPCA, the revenue and the expenses? Do we have that in here? Or is that, I thought we saw that supplementally last year, too. I could be wrong on that, but if we could. And if we did this in previous years before 2014, do we know where it was buried in the budget? Ms. I&I?
We've definitely done this before. I don't know where it was in the
Yeah.
budget. We've talked about it before. We've had Mr. White come before us. When you look at this, it's basically separating the stormwater runoff.
Yeah, no, I know what it
So-
is.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out where it was. I can't,
I don't know where it was before.
No, in 2010, there was a DEP grant for it.
okay, so it might not have run through, it might have been grant money.
Correct. That was the most recent one that we did.
Can we just do a little bit of research and find out? I don't want to kill it.
Yep.
I don't want to beat it to death, but it's sticking out to me. And if we could see just a full P&L on this, that'd be great. And do we have any other questions on WPCA? Let's go to Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey, and then we'll go to Mrs. Leclerc.
Mine is, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Leclerc because mine is more general, so.
Okay,
it's on
Mrs. Leclerc.
My question's probably for Linda. Thanks. It's for Linda, and it's about the, where is it? Line 52-100 and 52-105. And do you budget a certain amount per person? How do you charge the amount? Or is it specific for how you budget it?
We budget off the Aon numbers. We've spoken about the renewal numbers.
Right.
We use the December Aon gross renewal numbers over the employees, over the number of employees. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's 21 employees, you take an amount per 21?
Yes.
But not specifically for those exact 21, just the budgeted amount?
No, go right ahead.
Yes, net of the employee contributions. And that's where your variance occurs, vary from individual to individual depending on their contract.
Are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you. Joe, I wondered if you would just give folks here a little bit of an update in terms of the plan to create a plan. Just because there will be in the coming years, I currently sit, and Mr. Walsh has sat on the WPCA as a selectman. There will be some improvements needed, and there's a process that's happening now, and I just think it might be helpful in terms of having a little bit of a sense of what's coming.
Sure. As an industry standard, wastewater treatment plants are required to come up with a facility plan once every about 20 to 25 years. So that's when you take a comprehensive look at your system, evaluate what you have. Our last facility plan was done in 1996, so it's getting near that time in age span. And also, there's another triggering requirement as part of our state DEP permit, is that once you hit 90% of your average daily flow, that also triggers that you have to relook at your system, evaluate it, to plan for when you're going to reach that 100%. Now, we've been at that 90% threshold for approximately 5 years. So we're at the stage now where we have to begin the facilities planning process. So that is a comprehensive look at the facility going forward for the next, okay, let's project what Fairfield will look like in the next 20 years. Where will our development pressures be? How will this affect our conveyance system, our pump stations, our wastewater treatment plant? And then you outline your improvements you have to make now and coming down the road to address the needs of the town. So that's the process that we're going to follow for the WPCA. We have a draft RFP. We'll probably be talking at our next meeting, get it out on the street, interview consultants. We submitted as part of an application to the Clean Water Fund in September, an application for grant money, so hopefully the DEP will participate in this process. So that's where we are as far as the master plan. It's called the facilities plan for wastewater treatment systems, but basically it's a master plan, a comprehensive plan of development like P&Z does. It's analogous to that.
And thank you for that, which will likely result in some significant capital expenditures going forward that we'll need to do. Clearly, that will be part of this separate budget, but I think it's important for people to be aware.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
When everybody gets home this evening, since we're going to get home early, you can turn to pages 85 in your CAFR. And you'll see that for 2013, year ended June 30, the revenues for the WPCA were $4,966,000. Expenditures, $4,524,000. There were some transfers out for a net change in fund balance, increase in fund balance of $342,000 for an ending fund balance $39,000.
Great, thank you. I look forward to seeing what the budgeted one is for 2015. Thanks for that information. I would assume that 3 million that's sitting there, part of that will go towards this capital plan, then eventually is going to have to be put in place, no?
Yes.
Yes, but once again, the WPCA does fund capital projects out of that too, but, you know, with the capital plan going forward, wastewater treatment plant is, you know, not only is it one of the most technical issues that a town does, it's probably one of the most expensive that a town does.
No, I get it. What I'm concerned about on that regard is, what do we have, and thank you for bringing that up. I'm trying to figure out where does that stand within our waterfall model for our bonding, because I'm assuming the town has to stand behind that, right?
And that is one thing that one thing that needs to be done. None of the WPCA future projects are programmed in the waterfall chart in any way, shape, or form, so
And
that
my
needs to
question
be
is,
done.
do they have to be? Because if it's as, A, as technical as you said, B, it's 20-odd years, C, technical and age means money.
Correct.
Where does it stand within our waterfall, and are we looking at the wrong thing because of that? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else?
I'm going to give you a bit of an answer.
Okay.
The town has X number of buildings. It has the WPCA treatment plant. The waterfall as it exists is based upon known projects, but we have actually internally started looking at this. Mr. Michelangelo started gathering information, and as we develop the information, same with the replacement equipment, motor vehicle equipment, as we determine what will go in there, then it will be added.
No, I get it. I'm trying to figure out whether it was ever contemplated. When the waterfall was put together with projections over the last number of years, we tried to include everything related to the town. You know, projects that we knew, allowances for things that we didn't. Was WPCA a consideration with that one way or another?
It's under consideration. We just don't have any numbers in there yet.
Right, which means it's not included in the waterfall.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yes, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, is the bond that we have for the current WPCA facility paid off yet?
No, sir.
When's that going to be paid off?
I think about 10 years?
2022, I think.
Okay, but when you're talking about this plan,
That's
we're
probably
talking
in the
about
CAFR.
adding an enhancement, possibly? We're not talking about a brand-new facility, right?
Correct. We're not talking about a brand-new facility.
Okay.
But
Okay.
a rehab, even if you're, well, one of the things that we're, like I said, we're at 90% of our capacity, so we need to, most likely, the next work at our wastewater treatment plant won't just be a upgrade like it was done last time, it will be an upgrade and expansion. And just to give you a scale, you know, where I came from, Cheshire, which their plant is less than half of our plant, well, they're starting just a wastewater treatment plant upgrade now for $32 million. So, and if you go down the line in, you know, it's not unusual for a plant our size like Stratford or Stamford to invest millions of dollars in their plant.
I don't know that the question is investing the millions of dollars. The question is the bonding for a longer period than the useful life?
Yeah, and that's my concern, is that you're talking about basically maybe, like, to say this number, 30, what do you say, $30 million?
Well, I'm just saying the scale of what these
Okay.
type projects.
And that's a smaller town, correct?
Correct.
And we potentially have a facility that we bonded over 20 years, I believe it was, that's not even going to last the useful life of the 20 years.
Well, no, it will last the 20 years. These projects will last the 20 years.
But with an expansion that could possibly be $30 million.
Here's what doesn't add up right now. When did we build the current facility?
What the original construction was, it dates back to the 50s, I believe.
Okay,
The last rehabilitation,
Yeah. It might be a little difficult for Joe to answer some of these questions since he wasn't.
No, I get it. I'm just
he's
trying to
been
get a
here-
feel.
Correct.
Because what
And-
doesn't make sense is, was it a 30-year bond? Because if it was done 19 years ago,
And I think that, again, as we put together that plan, I think we've got to include some history so we can get that perspective. And your questions are right on the money in terms of we certainly don't want to bond something longer than whatever the useful life is.
And we certainly don't want to know that we have $30 million in potential need that's not included in waterfall schedules.
Correct. And once again, these projects are years in the making.
Yeah, I get it.
Correct. So,
But
and once again,
our
we're,
waterfall models covers 30 years.
correct,
so-
and we're beginning to evaluate that, so.
But now that it's been identified, I believe that we're going to have to start having some form of placeholder in the waterfall.
Right.
I mean, this has now been put on our table, just brought up now. I mean, it's not like this waterfall can now go out 2 or 3 more years and not address this issue. We're going to have to start putting a number in here and getting some rough estimates on what we're talking about, because a $30 million number is a huge number.
Yeah, the original issue was $29,436,000, 2003. Final maturity date is July 31, 2022.
So we're looking at basically
So
doing
basically,
the
I
same
said
number.
about 10 years. There's all kinds of issues and decisions that will have to be made. Who pays for it, how much the user pays for it, how much the town pays for it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's,
Yeah, no, I get that. The question I would have is, are we going to be, okay, we have a 2022 number, right? And basically, you're going to be talking about a rehab of the facility, right?
In the future, at some point.
Right. Now, is it going to be, is that rehab going to be before, is it reasonable to expect that rehab's going to be needed before 2022? Back to Jim's question.
That is something that the facilities plan will address.
Okay, so you don't know yet?
Correct, yeah, and I shouldn't have even thrown out the Cheshire number, but just to give you a scale of the magnitude
I think we need to know
of
it.
what wastewater treatment costs.
May I jump in?
Yeah.
So we do need to know. And I actually had the same conversation at the WPCA meeting, and that's why I encouraged, and Joe has been on it, the facilities plan. And I had similar questions and comments when we met there.
When was
The
that?
facilities plan, this has been an ongoing conversation for the past few months at the WPCA meetings in terms of looking at the budget, looking at, as you referenced, Tom, the number that is in that capital account now, what capital projects are taken out, as Bob referenced, looking at user fees, et cetera. But what Joe has reiterated to that body is that the facilities plan is what will identify the needs. I brought this up tonight because I think it's important, just as I said with the retirement board, that sometimes, these boards, the WPCA is an independent entity that will make decisions, and that it's important that we all communicate with one another. This is something that is coming, but we don't have the information. Similarly, at the WPCA level, there are certainly some folks who have sat at that table who have amazing technical experience, as Jim knows, who have said the same as Joe. So my sense, and the reason that I asked Joe the question to start this conversation was, I think we need to anticipate that this is going to be a significant expense. We need to understand that the WPCA is going to have some conversations, and that we aren't going to have definitive numbers. I would prefer that too, until this RFP goes through and until this study gets done. And, I mean, Joe obviously knows much more about this than I do, but just to fill you in a bit on that conversation.
Okay, but that's all well and good, and I get it, and thank you for bringing it up tonight. I guess the frustrating part, from my perspective on that, is we have a capital planning workshop every year. This year, when did we have it? January? Because it kept on getting delayed? Or was this, no, this year we had it in the fall.
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago. Ignore that. My point is, this isn't exactly a surprise. We've been working on this capital planning item for a long period of time. Now, I understand we don't have a good number right now on this number, but, we know it's a little bit more than a breadbasket. We know maybe it's not as much as a skyscraper, and yet we didn't hear about this a month ago when we were approving bonding. We didn't hear about this a few months ago when we were approving bonding. So now all of a sudden we're hearing, oh yeah, by the way, we may have a $30 million item that's going to come up within the next few years. and I know that, by the way, the administration has done a pretty good job at actually looking on the town side of saying, these are all the items we need, right?
Well, actually, it's only in the last couple of years. I mean, think about when you first worked with the administration, prior administration, to develop the waterfall chart. It was really only a couple of years ago we got a comprehensive look at the town side in terms of making sure everything is loaded up there and had to look at that.
That's my point. You just raised a good point, which is we thought we had a comprehensive look, and quite frankly, it's not comprehensive. Because we have this one item that, I guess what I'm saying is, the fact that we've been having these capital planning workshops is not a surprise. We've been having them now for 3 or 4 years. And we have people that are involved in those capital planning workshops that haven't communicated that, oh, by the way, we've got this huge nut that might be out there that could or could not impact us. Like, I still don't know what the financing mechanism of this is. All I know is this is the equivalent of a school. This is the equivalent of finding out, oh, by the way, we might need another school in terms of dollars.
Oh, yeah, no, you're correct, and I think that we're at the point that it makes sense to include it, and I think Joe's got to get back to us and let us know at what point in the future this might be coming. And I think at this point, I haven't heard a definitive date on that back from Joe, so.
Correct. And facilities planning processes are usually, at least a year just in the making themselves. They're, it's a total it's a total overview of the town, our system, and our plan. So.
I get it, but this is prescribed by, if not law, regulation. We knew this was coming up. We knew that we either, because we're, you said yourself, we're at 90% capacity for 5 years, there's a trigger, and at least every 20 to 25 years to do this. So we have 2 fail-safe triggers here that, maybe we ought to know, when we're doing capital planning, that, by the way, this, is highly technical, the most technical thing we do in town, and very expensive, so maybe we ought to have a placeholder in there for it. And yes, I'm letting my frustration show because we're trying to be very comprehensive in our capital planning so that we make fully informed decisions. And then, an oh, by the way moment, we might have this come out is, blown that comprehensiveness
Yeah,
out of
Tom,
the water.
I understand your frustration, but, Joe is relatively new here in the last 2 years. He's looking at this. He brought this issue to the fore and brought the dialogue to the fore and brought that to the WPCA Commission. So it's definitely an opportunity to improve in terms of including it in. But I think Joe certainly has come on board and raised those issues and identified what some of those key points are, or milestones, or thresholds, so that we can now start planning for that.
And going back to the Cheshire example, if I could cite that, it was about a 10-year window between when the facilities plan was done, probably in 2004, till ground broke on the upgrade project in 2014. So
It's a time frame. Yeah, I understand. And I wasn't, quote-unquote, attacking you or going after you. I'm saying the process as a whole has to be better. There's a whole bunch of people that have been involved in talking about this.
And in getting to that, should we be putting any money in this year's budget for starting to hire consultants to determine what our system's looking like and to get some estimates on so we could properly plan for this? Because we're going to be making decisions on bonding and all sorts of stuff, and if we have a hole of 0 in there for any of this, whatever number this works out to be, it's going to create significant pressure in other areas. So the question is, Joe, at this point, do you think we should be putting money in to hire consultants at this point in time to start giving us a broad overview?
I think from a WPCA budget standpoint, they've got that $3 million reserve fund, and I would expect some of that money could be used to hire the consultants on a timely basis.
So we don't have to approve the utilization of that fund through this operating budget. They can do that separately.
That would be my understanding at the moment, but happy to confirm that to be sure, but I believe they can.
Can we confirm that? Just because, if we're going to eventually be on the hook for some large number, I want to know how, I think we all want to know how they're using that $3 million reserve fund. You know? So can we confirm whatever the regulations are requiring that? And thank you. Mr. Brockfeld?
Yeah, I'm trying to, this is not a motion per se.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it goes without saying that all the concerns raised by members of this board are reasonable, and thank you, Joe, for discussing it with us. I guess, I think the best thing to do is, rather than beat this to death, since there are no numbers at this point, there's no time frame and so forth, but I think it's reasonable for us to make a request of the first selectman and the CFO to come back to us with whatever information they have that is a little firmer. I'm just getting a little uncomfortable. You know, there's a lot of speculation here.
I agree.
But I do think at a date certain, either maybe just when this budget season's over, maybe the next meeting, it would be nice if they could let us know a little more, you know, of what might be firm, what might not be firm, and so forth.
Can we request that at our next quarterly review meeting, can we make sure this is in the minutes, that we get an update on where the WPCA is in this process? And if there's a timeline put together and more information on what the process is going to be, that we know that. And if there's a range that is supplied to the administration that we can include in the waterfall schedule to the extent we can, for a placeholder, that we do that for planning purposes too, knowing full well that it's a preliminary number until such time as a real number can be provided.
Mr. Flynn?
Yeah.
And I guess a question I'd like to at least the administration to explore, to be provided at the same point, is if you know you have something like this coming up in the next 5, whether it's 5 years or 7 years, do you start reserving more money when you charge your use fees, so that you start building up a fund to be able to pay for this? I guess that's a question, and I don't know whether that's legal or not legal. I just don't know whether, since we have a long lead-in, as you said, do you start, and does our WPCA, the commission, have to start thinking about when they set rates, putting in larger reserves?
Your point's well taken, from the standpoint that one of the discussion points has been to get to a, if you will, a financial plan for the WPCA, so we can see what they're covering in terms of their sur-use fees, and then look at, get a little bit more knowledgeable in terms of what other communities do, and how much of that's bonded and run through this WPCA mechanism and just attached to the sewer assessment.
Right.
As opposed to through the tax base. Certainly, a lot of our residents don't use the sewers.
Right.
And the question, should they be paying for that if they're not? So that's what I'm looking for in terms of both, not only just the capital plan, but also the financial plan, which I think addresses more of what you're talking about. Those are two things we've been talking about and have plans to get underway from that standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. McCarthy-Vahey, you had something else?
Two things. One, there has been conversation at the WPCA level about some of that. And two is, to you, Mr. Michelangelo, this body is looking at its next quarterly review, some kind of range of number. But what I heard when I asked at WPCA was, that range of number is not going to be available until after we have hired a consultant to be able to gather the information needed. Am I right in that understanding?
Correct. Any placeholder will be a very, unscientific, without a scope of what a project would entail.
With the numbers that we're talking about, a placeholder is better than no placeholder.
Yeah, I think if I understood the request correctly, it was, we want to get our best guess, forgive the use of the expression.
Sure.
It's very true.
At the moment, and to be refined, and again, with the knowledge and with the time frame from when that gets refined, so we can know when we can expect better information and better numbers as we go. And if
Exactly.
that's, and a time frame for the consultant, what the time frame is for bringing them on, how long it takes. So if that number is refined over the next 2 years, then at least we have the proper expectation on this board and where we are.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Tetro. Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey, are you done?
I'm set.
Great.
If you have any more bombs you want to drop tonight that are not going to make me be able to sleep, you might as well start dropping them.
David?
Nothing else, Jim.
No, I do want to announce the Giants will win the Super Bowl.
All right. Now I can't sleep. Go ahead.
So, one question maybe that we can get answered in relation to how it would handle on the rating side, but if we were to move that over to the WPCA, maybe as a self-fund on the bond, what does that sort of do with the amount that we bond within the budget and that sort of percentage that we kind of always want to stay under the 10%? If we shift it over, does it then still have an impact just from a ratings perspective?
Yeah, I think
so
you
I
want
don't
to...
know where we can, at
Yeah.
some stage, get that, but that'd be helpful.
I think you want to let us put together that plan, take a number, reconstitute the...
Yeah, not asking for it tonight, definitely,
Yeah,
but I
so,
think
yeah,
it'd be helpful.
And again, there are always mixed messages from the rating agencies in some specific categories. On one hand, that 10% number is not something they ever say, but it is kind of a understood guideline. On the other hand, they will tell us that we have plenty of room to bond more if we want to. They haven't explained to me how we can bond more and stay under the 10% yet, but I'm still waiting to get that answer.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
well, no, I know we're there, and I know that we've been trying to keep that down. I guess being a self-fund, possibly a self-funding sort of an item, I'm curious how that may play out. So I don't know if we'll have that answer at the quarterly. If we can, that'd be great, I think it'd be helpful, but certainly want to put it on the radar that it's something that maybe be good to get answered, that's all.
Yeah, I think that's what Mr. Walsh was referencing and what our conversation was before about a more comprehensive plan, not only from the capital side, but also on the financial side for WPCA,
Yeah.
which would explain, do they start putting, what do they do with their pricing mechanism? How much of that is, in essence, buying on layaway?
Yeah.
As opposed to bonding after the fact? How much of that runs through the WPCA, the payment of the bonds run through the W? And I'm not proposing answers to all these questions, but I think these are the questions we need to have answered so that we can get a comprehensive look at what it means
And
going forward.
and whether it needs to go on
Yeah,
the
no, I
town's balance sheet is the town full faith and credit supplying the bond rating agency, because that's what we have to do for schools, and that's what we have to do for others, and that's, where that has to go, has to be part of that conversation.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Seeing none from the public, Mr. Michelangelo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion? Mr. Becker, second. Mrs. Leclerc, all in favor of adjournment? Those opposed? We're done, everybody. Good night.